It's the second day of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. Your opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to actually get out there, get active, do something, tag your it. Your opportunity to help build and share progressive media. Number one, tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. Talk about it in social media. Make a tag at the end of your email address that says, I watch the Thom Hartmann Program on Free Speech TV, Dish, Direct, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways. You just think about, hey, we can toss this in, we can toss this. Tell your family about it. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. Something to bring up, maybe even have it on the TV and show people. So let's spread the word. This is, right now, one of the big challenges that Free Speech TV has, of course, is raising enough money to run this network. And, 3-4 times a year, we have to come on the air for 2 or 3 weeks each time and ask for help, or give people an opportunity to help. If we had twice as many viewers, we could do it half as much, right? Because it doesn't cost Free Speech TV anymore to have twice as many viewers. They put the signal up on the satellite or they put it out on the internet, and it really doesn't matter. On the internet, it might cost a little more if there's a lot more people watching, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what they would make up in increased fundraising. So please spread the word, right? That's probably the most important thing you can do. But also, we've got to pay the bills. We've got another 3 months here where we got to pay for the lights and for the electrons to go up to the satellites and right into your home and into your TV. Pay the payrolls and everything else. We need to keep this show on the air. We need to keep this network on the air. And you're the one who can make that happen with a gift right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. I believe that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I've been doing this for so long, I do it from memory. But so please call now. Here are some of the premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, they've got these a bumper sticker that says, "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says, "Nobody is above the law." It's a pretty straightforward design and logo. With a $120 gift, now this, you can break this up $10 a month over 12 months. You get the Free Speech TV t-shirt, Never Again is Now. With the $250 gift, you can sign up for the online study class with Professor Thom. That's a virtual meet and greet where we just connect on a Zoom link, and you can be on camera or not. You can just listen in if you'd prefer. You'll see me on your computer, and it'll be live in real time. It's a video chat thing, and you don't have to have any technical expertise to do this. All you have to have is a computer that's connected to the internet, and the people at Free Speech TV will email you a link, and you just click that link, and everything will pop right up, and you'll be right there. So it's kind of cool. It uses it's Skype or Zoom. I'm pretty sure it's Zoom, but whatever it is, it works really well. We've done several of them now, and they're nice. That's with a $250 gift. With a $360 gift, which again could be split out $30 a month for 3 months, or for 10 months, for 12 months, excuse me, for a year, $30 a month, or $360. You get the Study Up with Professor Thom package, including my book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. This is the book that kind of shook the world of psychology and psychiatry, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I mean, it was extremely, when I first came out with this theory back in the 90s, it was extremely controversial. I did a lot of traveling all around the world, around Australia, around Europe, all across the United States, talking about this. And this is the most recent. It's the first book that I wrote on it, where I laid it out. We took that book and updated the science, wrote a new chapter. Particularly, one of the most important chapters, I think, and something I'd never addressed before, is that I forget whether it's 63 or 67%, but people with ADHD are roughly 2/3 more likely to have sleep problems. And it probably has to do with being high-energy people. I'm one of those people. I know what I'm talking about. And I really did a deep dive into the science and literature on this, and we found that there are things that you can do. And so there's a chapter on sleep now in that book, as well as other new content. So that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for an hour here in the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. But the bottom line is, Free Speech TV needs your help right now. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make your contribution. Help keep this network going. Help keep this show going. You know, please help Free Speech TV. This is such an important television network. It's the only genuine progressive television network on the air. Been around for 17, 18 years. I've been here for more than a decade, I believe. So please help out. Thank you. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And happy Friday, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak, whatever it may be for you. It's Anything Goes Friday on the Thom Hartmann Program, except we've got some special deal just for you today. First of all, in our first hour, I'm going to lay out a few news stories that I think that we all need to know about, and then I'll pick up your phone calls for the rest of the hour. Our second hour, Congressman Mark Pocan is going to be with us for the whole hour. He's typically here on Wednesdays, middays with Mark. But Wednesday, we had these hearings, and so our whole, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday normal schedule just got totally blown to hell, and here we are. Or blown to heck, excuse me. And anyway, and in our third hour, my old writing partner and buddy, Lamar Waldron, and every time he comes on, people are just like, this is must-listen-to radio. Or must-watch television, depending on how you're getting the show. Lamar is going to be with us for an hour talking about today is the anniversary, the 56th anniversary of the assassination of John Kennedy. And he's going to be talking about how the Kennedy assassination was tied into Nixon and Watergate, and how that is tied into Donald Trump, and an ongoing cover-up that Donald Trump is now participating in. So anyhow, we got a lot to get to today, but I just want to share a bunch of, I haven't really even all this week had a chance to just bring you up to date on what I think are some of the most important news stories. By the way, I have an op-ed. It just went up over at Alternate. It'll probably soon be on, Salon and Common Dreams and Raw Story. I'm not sure where all, Los Angeles Progressive, LA Progressive. There's a bunch of different publications that typically pick up my articles. They're syndicated by IMI. The Independent Media Institute. But it went up over on Alternate about an hour ago. It's titled Revenge of the Billionaires, How an Oligarchy of the Morbidly Rich Can Take Down Democracy. And it's about this whole Civil War issue of the Atlantic that's out right now, and how Civil War has been essentially declared on all of us. So just give you a heads up with that. And apropos of that, also, I did an interview with Chauncey DeVega last week, and he did a marvelous job of cleaning it up and editing it. And it's over at chaunceyDeVega.com, but it's also on salon.com right now. Okay, some of the stuff in the news. CNBC is reporting that Mitt Romney has launched a new Republican attempt to cut Social Security and Medicare. This is a rehash of the Romney-Ryan plan from 2012, basically privatizing large chunks of both Medicare and Social Security. And he's proposing, Romney's working on this. The Progressive Change Campaign Committee has a petition up that I would refer you to say no. we don't want to. We don't like Mitt Romney's plan to cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, or excuse me, Medicare and Social Security. You can find it at PCCC. You know, the one thing that they don't put in their emails is what their actual URL is. It's just a hot link to it. So you may have to Google Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Mark Carlin, another old friend of mine, he's the editor of BuzzFlash.com, which has been revived now. It used to be one of the top progressive websites and is moving in that direction again. BuzzFlash.com. Mark had taken a few years off from working on this, but he's back. And he's got a new piece titled "Devin Nunes Endangers Our National Security as a Putin Puppet." It's really worth reading. There's an enormous amount of background in there, and in fact, maybe we'll get Mark on next week to talk about it. The gaslighting has begun from the Trumpies and from the media. And this morning NPR. I heard this morning. I listened to NPR in the shower. And turned on the radio, and they're talking about Mike Pence and his high school term paper about, Lincoln finding Jesus and all this stuff. I mean, it was just, get ready for this wonderful man, President Pence. He might be coming. And if he's not coming, he might be running for president in 2024 or, he's such a good man. And of course, all over the media, this is good news for Trump. Everything's good. In fact, over on actually in multiple news outlets right now, they're reporting, but this was on Fox News this morning. Trump went on Fox and Friends and told a bunch of lies. I mean, just a whole bunch of explicit lies. Said CrowdStrike was a Ukrainian company, for goodness sake. But he also, now keep in mind, yesterday Trump had a lunch with a large handful of Republican senators, the people who will be the jurors in his trial. Susan Collins and Mitt Romney and, a bunch of the usual crowd. And after that lunch, he's like, all of a sudden, he's quite enthusiastic to have a trial in the Senate. In other words, basically, they told him, don't worry, the fix is in. And because of that, I would say to my... I was going to say my Democratic colleagues, but I'm not a member of Congress. How would you say it? To our elected representatives, were I to call my state representative today at 202-224-3121, excuse me, my U.S. House of Representatives, my representative, and we'll be talking to Mark Pocan, as I said, in an hour. I would say now is not the time to wrap up the investigation. They already have their narrative about, well, there was no quid pro quo. The aid got released. The president of Ukraine will not say that there was a quid pro quo. So, I mean, there's so much going on here. This White House refusing to, basically defying Congress. I think Congress just needs to declare an all-out war is the wrong, I hate that metaphor. There have been so many crimes that Trump has committed from the get-go. The get-go was the whole emoluments clause thing, which appears twice in the Constitution. Where it talks about compensation for the president, it says he'll receive a salary and no other emolument. Well, he's making a fortune. I mean, there's $250,000 that the Secret Service just paid to Trump Properties that nobody can even figure out why. So I think that, and getting Giuliani and Bolton and Mulvaney and Lev Parnas, I mean, you've got these two guys. Lev was apparently with Giuliani in a meeting with Zelensky's guy in Madrid. So, these guys, there is more there. And I personally don't think now is any time to stop, even though I know that, you've got all these Republican consultants who come onto MSNBC who don't like Donald Trump, but they're Republicans. And they're saying, well, I think this needs to get wrapped up right away. And people, kind of concerned trolls, right? Well, gee, if this goes on very much longer, the 6 Democratic senators who are running for president won't be able to go out and be on the stump. And so what? I think the fate and future of the Republic is more important, frankly. I really do. I mean, this is the essence of the op-ed that I wrote on Alternate, Revenge of the Billionaires, that we are sliding into oligarchy. In fact, I would say we are in oligarchy now. We are no longer a small d democracy. And, we need to raise the alarm about this. Lev Parnas, Igor and Lev, right, also helped Devin Nunes' investigations. I'm pretty sure I talked about that one yesterday, so I'll just skip along. There's things to look for in the news, right? When you're reading Daily Kos or, any of the other great websites out there, Common Dreams, Alternate, Raw Story, Salon, LA Progressive. There's just some amazing stuff. Elizabeth Warren is talking about how, and this news just broke yesterday, that a couple of days ago or a week or so ago, Mark Zuckerberg, when he was in town, when he was in D.C., he had a secret lunch at the White House with Trump. And so now musicians and other people are actually starting to take down their Facebook pages and saying, it's becoming quite obvious that Facebook's politics are right-wing. I think this is probably why they disabled my personal account. I literally, in the 10 or 15 years that I'd had that account, had posted maybe 6 things, and they were all about family. I mean, it was one of those accounts where you don't let the public see you, and it's just the people you know. But they took it down, and which is fine with me, frankly. I mean, but Zuckerberg, he's been meeting with Peter Thiel, another right-wing billionaire who writes for the Washington Post. And Elizabeth Warren is saying, amid antitrust scrutiny, Facebook is now going on a charm offensive with Republican lawmakers. And now Mark Zuckerberg and one of Facebook's board members, a major Trump donor, had a secret dinner with Trump. This is corruption, plain and simple. I agree with her. Speaking of Elizabeth Warren, she was speaking at Clark Atlanta University yesterday, and her speech got interrupted by a bunch of demonstrators wearing black T-shirts with that said "Powerful Parent Network" on them, shouting, "We want to be heard! We want to be heard!" Turns out this is a group reportedly funded by the Walton Family Foundation. Yes, the Waltons, the richest billionaire oligarch family in America. And they're in favor of, for-profit private schools instead of our having public schools. Surprise, it's the Walton family. And their suckers interrupted Elizabeth Warren yesterday. Over on Common Dreams, Medea Benjamin is writing about, she just got back from Bolivia. We're going to try and get her on the show next week as well. But she says, I'm writing from Bolivia. This is on commondreams.org. I'm writing from, the title is They're Killing Us Like Dogs, a Massacre in Bolivia and a Plea for Help. Keep in mind, the oligarchs have taken over Bolivia and evicted the first indigenous president of that country, Evo Morales. I'm writing from Bolivia just days after witnessing the November 19 military massacre at the Sencata gas plant in the indigenous city of El Alto and the tear gassing of a peaceful funeral procession on November 21st to commemorate the dead. These are examples, unfortunately, of the modus operandi of the de facto government that seized control in a coup that forced Evo Morales out of power. So there's that. And so anyway, a lot going on. I'm gonna hit a break right now, and we will pick up your phone calls right after this. I'll be taking your calls for the rest of this hour. And then Congressman Mark Pocan, as we get toward the end of this hour, get ready. If you don't get on with me, Joyce will come on and ask you if you would like to ask your question of Congressman Pocan. And Mark Pocan will be with us for the second hour. In our third hour today, Lamar Waldron for the full hour, talking about the association between Nixon, Watergate, Trump, and the killing of John Kennedy.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And if that sounds like a lot, it is. It's mind-boggling. We'll be back. And welcome back. Let's see here. Steve in Napa, California. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, I just want to talk a little bit about David Lifton's book that came out on the Bethesda autopsy roughly in 2000.
Yeah.
The story goes something like this, that a lot of the Navy people that were working at Bethesda testified that basically the two caskets arrived at Bethesda, one with the official casket, which, is accompanied by Jackie Kennedy, and then another one that came in earlier. And, there's 3 or 4, 5 of them that testified to that story one way or another. And then they went back to the official log that was at Bethesda and found that indeed there was a record that casket came in earlier. And the story goes that a guy named John Leggett, who was supposedly one of the top reconstruction guys that worked as a coroner, I don't know what his official title was. His story is pretty complicated, but that some surgery was done on the back right of Kennedy's head to repair that wound.
Right.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that was, to clean him up for the whatever. Bobby Kennedy was actually supervising the autopsy, and the reason why, some would argue, and it has been argued by a number of people who were there, that the body was essentially mutilated so that you couldn't do a good forensic analysis of where the bullets came from, was because at that point in time, one of the very first things that the conspirators in this thing, the mob, Carlos Marcello and Sandro Trafficante, the mob guys, and their buddies who were mobsters who worked in the CIA, one of the very first pieces of information that they got into the press was that Lee Harvey Oswald was the shooter. And Lee Oswald was a name that Bobby Kennedy recognized because he had been part of, and it's a long story, but in any case, Bobby Kennedy recognized that name, and that led to this connection to Castro, and this was what convinced Bobby and a bunch of other people, by the way, that and they held this conviction for a few months that Castro was the one who had killed Jack Kennedy, and that's why they initiated the cover-up, and that's why the Warren Commission. You see that picture of Earl Warren walking out of Lyndon Johnson's office with tears in his eyes. LBJ basically just told him, we've got to cover up the assassination of President Kennedy because the American people find out that Kennedy was killed by Castro, or by an agent of Castro, because Lee Oswald had been at the Cuban embassy down in Mexico City. And that was all being reported in real time at that time, that the American people will demand that we strike on Cuba. And keep in mind, this was just a year after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So,
can I just add one thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the story was that the only chance they would have had to switch the bodies out was when LBJ insisted that Jackie come, and Jackie was by the casket side the entire time, and the only time she was away from it is when LBJ insisted that she come for the swearing-in ceremony.
Yeah, I'm not down with they switched the casket. There was another body theory. To the best of my knowledge, Steve, they simply opened up and explored the wounds in a clumsy way that would have made any kind of forensic analysis very, very difficult. Steve, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and it is Anything Goes Friday. Audrey in Chicago. Hey, Audrey, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Tom. I'm calling because I wanted to comment on a comment that was made by Representative Devin Nunes, I think yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying how he suspects that the Democratic Party members are just giddy about the impeachment process. Mm-hmm. And that he doesn't believe what the members of Congress are saying about how somber and prayerful and sad they are. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say this. I am prayerful, but I am giddy.
Yes.
I am giddy.
They can coexist. Me too.
Yes. I am a veteran of the U.S. Army. I'm a black woman in America. And, you know, if Devin Nunes is so blessed that he has no appreciation for how wonderful it is to have justice done upon unjust people, good for him. But this man, this president has done nothing but prove how unfit and unqualified he is since the moment he took the oath. Yeah. He has violated his oath. I took an oath, too. I took an oath to defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And this man has done nothing short of proving himself to be a domestic enemy. And it is pitiful that he is our commander-in-chief. So I am just giddy that justice is being done to hold him accountable. And hopefully, I don't know if the Senate's going to vote him out, but we should impeach him. At least one branch of our government, or part of one branch of our government, is upholding its constitutional oath. I am giddy, sir.
Yeah, I'm with you, Audrey. And you use the word enemy. I think one of the crimes for which Donald Trump should be impeached, or at least it should be mentioned, is his use of that phrase, enemy of the people, that Joe Stalin and Mao Zedong used to justify murdering journalists. And, and he has referred to the press over and over as enemy of the people. I think that's just obscene. Audrey, thank you for the call. Kia in Las Vegas. Hey, Kia, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I have a question for your audience, or anybody that can answer this. Mm-hmm. Will Pompeo and Bolton be forced to testify once the impeachment inquiry goes to Congress? To the Senate, you mean? For the trial? Senate, yes.
That's a good question. I'm guessing it'll be the same problem. I mean, Trump has been blocking all efforts to get by Congress, in my opinion, in violation of the Constitution and the law, particularly given the Bush, both in the case of Bill Clinton and in the case of Richard Nixon. The Supreme Court ruled no. You have to provide evidence. You have to turn over the tapes to Nixon. You have to testify before a grand jury to Clinton. Whether the Republicans can preserve their firewall when it gets to the Senate is a question that I don't know the answer to, Kia. We'll see if anybody else does. But I think that we're all speculating right now. We just don't know how low these guys will go, how far they will stoop to cover up on behalf of Donald Trump.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Anything Goes Friday, at least for the next half hour. Stick around. It's the second day of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. Your opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to actually get out there, get active, do something, tag your it. Your opportunity to help build and share progressive media. Number one, tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. Talk about it in social media. Make a tag at the end of your email address that says, I watch the Thom Hartmann Program on Free Speech TV, Dish, Direct, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways. You just think about, hey, we can toss this in, we can toss this. Tell your family about it. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. Something to bring up, maybe even have it on the TV and show people. So let's spread the word. This is, right now, one of the big challenges that Free Speech TV has, of course, is raising enough money to run this network. And, you know, 3-4 times a year, we have to come on the air for 2 or 3 weeks each time and ask for help, you know, or give people an opportunity to help. If we had twice as many viewers, we could do it half as much, right? Because it doesn't cost Free Speech TV anymore to have twice as many viewers. They put the signal up on the satellite or they put it out on the internet, and it really doesn't matter. On the internet, it might cost a little more if there's a lot more people watching, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what they would make up in increased fundraising. So please spread the word, right? That's probably the most important thing you can do. But also, we've got to pay the bills. We've got another 3 months here where we got to pay for the lights and for the electrons to go up to the satellites and right into your home and into your TV. You know, pay the payrolls and everything else. We need to keep this show on the air. We need to keep this network on the air. And you're the one who can make that happen with a gift right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. I believe that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I've been doing this so long, I do it from memory. But so please call now. Here are some of the premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, they've got these a bumper sticker that says, "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says, "Nobody is above the law." It's a pretty straightforward design and logo. With a $120 gift, now this, you can break this up $10 a month over 12 months. You get the Free Speech TV t-shirt, "Never Again is Now." With the $250 gift, you can sign up for the online study class with Professor Thom. That's a virtual meet and greet where we just connect on a Zoom link, and you can be on camera or not. You can just listen in if you'd prefer. You'll see me on your computer, and it'll be live in real time. It's a video chat thing, and you don't have to have any technical expertise to do this. All you have to have is a computer that's connected to the internet, and the people at Free Speech TV will email you a link, and you just click that link, and everything will pop right up, and you'll be right there. So it's kind of cool. It uses it's Skype or Zoom. I'm pretty sure it's Zoom, but whatever it is, it works really well. We've done several of them now, and they're nice. That's with a $250 gift. With a $360 gift, which again could be split out $30 a month for 3 months, or for 10 months, for 12 months, excuse me, for a year, $30 a month, or $360. You get the Study Up with Professor Thom package, including my book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. This is the book that kind of shook the world of psychology and psychiatry, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I mean, it was extremely, you know, when I first came out with this theory back in the 90s, it was extremely controversial. I did a lot of traveling all around the world, around Australia, around Europe, all across the United States, talking about this. And this is the most recent. It's the first book that I wrote on it, where I laid it out. We took that book and updated the science, wrote a new chapter. Particularly, one of the most important chapters, I think, and something I'd never addressed before, is that I forget whether it's 63 or 67%, but people with ADHD are roughly 2/3 more likely to have sleep problems. And it probably has to do with being high-energy people. I'm one of those people. I know what I'm talking about. And I really did a deep dive into the science and literature on this, and we found that there are things that you can do. And so there's a chapter on sleep now in that book, as well as other new content. So that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for an hour here in the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. But the bottom line is, Free Speech TV needs your help right now. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make your contribution. Help keep this network going. Help keep this show going. You know, please help Free Speech TV. This is such an important television network. It's the only genuine progressive television network on the air. Been around for 17, 18 years. I've been here for more than a decade, I believe. So please help out. Thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. John in Langley, Washington. Hey, John, what's up?
Good day, Professor. I love your show. I learn a lot.
Thank you.
And when I think I have something to add, I even try to call in.
Cool.
I am fascinated with this whistleblower thing. You see, whistleblowers usually are catch and kill by lawyers, like you talked about to someone yesterday. Usually they go to the lawyer, they try to figure it out, they catch it, they kill it, and never makes it big time. Why is this one becoming exposed? And I think I figured it out. And Holmes gave me the clue, cued me in yesterday when he said, wow, the Ukrainians are actually going to spend some of their own money on these stingers. So that made me think about, okay, the money flow. Who's not getting their money if Trump doesn't give aid to Ukraine? It's our military-industrial complex. And when 400 million gets stopped from the cycle that's expected to come through, people get upset. So therefore, this whistleblower his content was valuable to a certain population, that money flow people. Why do whistleblowers Julian Assange isn't even a whistleblower. They just couldn't find the whistleblower for the DNC, and they don't talk about the content of the DNC file. They don't talk about the content of the war crimes from Assange. We don't talk about
So the bottom line, John, what you're suggesting is that the whistleblower had some association with McDonnell Douglas or Raytheon or whoever makes Stinger missiles, or Javelin missiles, actually is what they're called. That somebody from that company was saying, hey, wait a minute, our $400 million is not making its way into our checking account yet?
Generally, yes. That's what I'm saying. When the money flow gets stopped, then people then
no, I get it. And it's not impossible. It's not impossible. Although I suspect that the whistleblower actually was somebody that that was there, who was an employee of the CIA, who had been detailed to the White House, who knew some of these folks but we'll see. We'll see. Time will tell. Let's see here. George in Santee, California. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Yes, Tom, good day. From what I understand, either in an interview or a speech or something, President Obama gave a warning to the Democrats to not go too far to the left.
Right.
And I wonder if you or somebody in your audience could clear that up for me. What is too far to the left? Is it like too much health care, too easy access to higher education?
This is a question I frequently ask myself and my listeners, George. I think too far to the left means having the federal government buy up corporations and start manufacturing cars and blue jeans and television sets. But, that's the far left, right? That's communism. But, your definitions, right? Socialism, socialism basically means, let me just, hang on just a second. Let me restart this. Capitalism means some people can get fabulously rich and lots of people are going to be very poor. Raw capitalism, unregulated capitalism. Communism means nobody can get very rich and everybody can be very poor. The way it was acted out in the Soviet Union. Socialism means you can still get rich, individuals can still get rich, but nobody gets poor. And that's the bottom line. I don't know what too far left is, in Obama's worldview, and frankly, I think that it's a question that should be asked more frequently. Steve in Park Ridge, Illinois. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Tom, I want to compliment you for your insightful article at rawstory.com that I read this morning.
Oh, is that the one on the billionaires and the end of democracy? Okay.
Yeah.
And Civil War. Thank you.
I've reposted it with my own brief commentary on my Facebook page, Concerned Citizen, for those interested in reading it. By the way, it now has over 34,000 followers. In any event,
cool.
Could it happen here? I think we've got all three of the four already upon us: the control of a critical portion of our media, the legalization of bribery of public officials, control of the court system, and the thing that worries me for people like you and maybe a small fish like me is the establishment of a police state.
Right.
We are in dire times, and I'm just glad there's voices like yours alerting us, and then, I try to translate it to my followers, et cetera.
Thank you.
Comment on that article briefly?
Say that again?
I said, could you just briefly comment on the article itself?
Sure. I haven't seen the raw story version over on, because when the IMI, the Independent Media Institute, when they syndicate my work, I think that the individual publications can change the headline to whatever they want. So the headline over at Alternet is Revenge of the Billionaires, How an Oligarchy of the Morbidly Rich Can Take Down Democracy. I'm not sure. Do you know what it was over on Raw Story?
That is the one, the Raw Story.
Same title? Okay. Yeah, essentially what I started out the article by pointing out that the Atlantic magazine, the cover story, and the entire issue is devoted to how to stop a civil war. And the Atlantic magazine, of course, first came into print about 5 years before the Civil War of the 1860s. And then I said, basically, we are already in a civil war. It's just a cold war. It's not a hot war yet. And that there are 3 parts necessary for an oligarchy to arise, replace democracy with oligarchy. Just for definitions, this is what Aristotle said. He said, tyranny is a kind of monarchy which has in view the interests of the monarch only. Oligarchy has in view the interests of the wealthy, democracy of the needy. Okay, so that's Aristotle's definitions. And the 3 things that I said are necessary for an oligarchy to replace a democracy are, number 1, as you mentioned, control of or substantial influence over a critical portion of the media. Number 2, legalization.
Tom, that would be Fox and right-wing radio, for example.
Well, and not just that. We now have about 80–90% of our media is being brought to us by fewer than a dozen companies. Secondly, and local newspapers are gone. Local ownership of radio and television stations is gone. I mean, it's just everything's been subsumed by these very large corporations, number 1. Number 2, legalization of bribery of public officials. That happened in 1976 with the Buckley decision, 78 with the First National Bank decision, and then, of course, Citizens United in October of 2010. And then number 3, control over the most critical parts of the court system so they can control legal processes. Initially, that's the Supreme Court, and now Trump has put over 150 people into the courts just immediately below the Supreme Court. And then the 4th element, I said, once the oligarchy is well established, and if Trump gets reelected, we will be at that point. I expect that if Trump gets reelected within 18 months of this day, or within 18 months of the day that he gets reelected of a year from now. So it'd be, in about 2 years, you will begin seeing selective prosecutions. They probably won't even look like that because, the way selective prosecution works is you can find dirt on anybody if you dig deep enough. And so what you'll start seeing are prominent voices on the left or people who are daring to challenge, particularly journalists, daring to challenge the establishment, are suddenly going to start getting busted for income tax evasion or for illegal possession of drugs or for, whatever. I mean, fill in the blanks.
Bogus things that basically silence their voice, correct?
Yeah, they won't be bogus. I mean, they will discover that, back 4 years ago, so-and-so that they're trying to take down submitted to their company, submitted a reimbursement for lunch, saying that it was a business lunch, and in fact they had lunch with their wife. And they will prosecute them for tax evasion. I mean, they will find something that can actually be used in a court and prosecute these people. And then I pointed out that there's these four generation cycle of great crashes and great wars, and we're in time for the 4th cycle. I've talked about that on this program many times. The 4th turning by Strauss and Howe, and how the oligarchy machine is just basically running everything. And Jimmy Carter on this program just came right out and said it. We're no longer a democracy. We're an oligarchy. Steve, I need to move along and let some other people in here, but thank you very much for sharing the article and for bringing it up and giving me an opportunity to riff on it. John in Mill Valley, listening on Real Talk 910. Hey, John, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I am great, but I'll get better. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying unfortunately, I'm enjoying with Schadenfreude, the misery that the Republicans are suffering.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I stumbled upon Fox News early this morning, about 5:30 West Coast time, and I could tell that they were talking to Trump on Fox and Friends because I had the mute on, but all the hosts were holding their cell phones a foot away from their ears, and they were cringing.
Seriously?
No, that was a joke.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. I mean, I'm just like, anything's possible, right? But yeah.
Well, I made that up on the spot. Anyway,
yeah, that was a good one.
I called. Thank you. I called to play the "What's the Republicans Done for Americans" game that you have.
Oh, my 15-year running contest of I'll send you an autographed book if you can name one piece of legislation that was initially supported, brought out as legislation by Republicans, was passed with a majority of Republicans, was signed into law by Republicans. One single piece of legislation in the last 60 years that principally benefits average working people instead of wealthy people or corporations. Yes, you have one?
Well, I've got two, but I think I'll go with the strongest one unless I have two answers.
Okay.
My first one would be the weekend before the Nixon 1972 election in October, the last October in 1972, October. He signed into legislation the Golden Gate National Recreation Park bill, which established a park in three counties, San Mateo, San Francisco, and Marin County. And I think Sonoma County is now in it, too.
So how do you know, John, that wasn't something that was being pushed by wealthy real estate developers who owned property around the park, who wanted to see the value of their property skyrocket?
Well, that was. I'm sure that's part of it, but
because having a park, it's like, yeah, average people can use a park, but typically when you see park politics,
5 million people visit the park every year.
No, I get that. What I was thinking of was there was a little mini scandal that I believe involved Mike Pence. It was it might have been John Kasich that had to do with putting a park in on the waterfront by one of the Great Lakes or some river. And it turned out that the reason that he was going out of his way to get this park, people really want this park, was because one of his largest donors owned a lot of the commercial property opposite the park, and they wanted the park to be established and not turned into competing businesses and things. And so, I'd want to know a little backstory there before I would give you the book on that one, John. And what was your other one?
My other one would be the do not call list, which I thought it was George Sr. passed it, but the 1-800 do not call.
Yeah.
But it turns out when I looked it up on the internet, it said it was George Jr.
Yeah.
2007, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, but that was a Republican initiative, not a Democratic initiative?
That was a Republican initiative.
Interesting. Okay. Well, John, let me put you on hold. And Joyce will get your information. Joyce, he's on line 1, and I will dig into that. And Joyce, please make a note of the do not call thing. Maybe we've got a winner. I don't know. But we'll find out, right? So anyhow, it's Anything Goes Friday for the next 15 minutes. And then for the next hour, Congressman Mark Pocan will be with us taking your calls. And then in our third hour today, Lamar Waldron is going to drop by, and we are going to do a deep dive into why Donald Trump is still hiding over 1 million JFK assassination files, and what that has to do with Watergate and Republican corruption, and how some of it may even reflect on Donald Trump himself.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And we'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Bill in Sun City, Arizona. Hey, Bill, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I have a question. I'm curious as to whether or not the local Republican Party has violated my civil rights.
What happened?
There's a strip mall in my neighborhood that I frequent. There's
a strip mall?
Shops a few shops in the mall that I do business with. My little red Honda Del Sol has a sign on the back that's in red and blue letters on a white field that says impeachment. You can read it. Impeach, it says. You can read it from a good distance away.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, I frequent this mall. 3 or 4 days ago, the sheriff showed up at my door to tell me that I was banned from that mall.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Wow.
The sheriff showed up. They said that they called the management company. There's where the violation of my civil rights go.
Right.
Evidently, the Republicans called to complain to the sheriff, and the sheriff took the initiative to call the management company. The head of the management company is the head of the Republican Party in Arizona.
And did they ban? I mean, you know, having a sheriff show up at your door is pretty intimidating. But did it go beyond that? Did they like ban you?
If I go to the mall.
You'll get arrested if you go to the mall?
To that mall, I'm threatened with arrest. The owner of the mall is the head of the Republican Party or the manager.
Bill, you need to call. You need to call your local Democratic Party, and you need to ask them if you need to tell them this story and ask them if they've got any good pro bono attorneys who work with the Democratic Party who would do this for you on, you know, for the principle rather than for the cash. And
they don't.
I beg your pardon?
I did call them. They don't.
They don't.
I called the New Times. I talked to Jay Stern, the head of the editorial department.
Is that your local paper?
He was interested. It's the local left-wing paper.
Right, the weekly.
He was interested in the story, said he'd get back to me, but he never got back to me. I think I tickled a pretty good nerve here.
Yeah. Well, as a starting point, you know, write a letter to your local newspaper, a letter to the editor. I would reach out if your local Democratic Party, if your Sun City Democratic Party, or are you in Maricopa County?
Yes.
Or did you call the county party or did you call the city party?
That's all you can call is the county. The
county. Okay. You might call the state. You might want to call a party at the state level and see if they might be willing to help you out. Because I mean, this is the kind of thing.
My rights are violated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your rights have been violated. And what I would do is, once I get a lawyer, I would then go to the mall, and you know, with the lawyer in tow, as you know, dressed as a friend who's going shopping with me, and get arrested. And go ahead.
I've already made plans that I'm going to the Democratic. They may meet at the Starbucks on Monday.
Right.
I'm going to go talk with a bunch of Democrats and see if they'll accompany me there.
There you go. And, you know, one of them may well be a lawyer. I mean, if you just because you got blown off by whoever you called doesn't mean that it can't be done. But that's the kind of story that you know, the national media would love. I mean, you know, you could turn this into a cause. It's you know, but be sure that you've got somebody with you who knows how to use a camera or a cell phone camera at the very least. And if you do cell phone camera footage of it, be sure to hold the camera sideways so it'll look good on television as opposed to vertically. That's the biggest mistake people make when they're videoing things with a cell phone, is they hold their cell phone vertically, and it needs to be horizontal. Bill, good luck. Call us back and let us know what works out, okay? Okay, thanks a lot. We'll be back. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. People who are supporting our program, check it out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Jonathan in Athens, Tennessee. Hey, Jonathan, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. I also make I always had this prediction that I kind of think before he will be impeached from the Congress, but I kind of had this bold prediction that he will resign and either be forced to resign or on his own, just because of all the damning statements coming out and stuff there.
Yeah, when I was listening to NPR this morning, doing a special praising Mike Pence. It occurred to me, maybe they know something I don't. I mean, or maybe they're anticipating that Trump will resign and he'll cut a deal with Mike Pence like Nixon did with Jerry Ford. You pardon me and my crime family, and I'll go quietly into that night. Good night. And I think, Jonathan, you may be onto something. We'll see. I mean, time will tell. Thanks a lot for the call. Christian in San Antonio, Texas. Hey, Christian, what's up?
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Tom, the most egregious part that most people miss is that the Ukrainian president knew exactly what was going on.
Yes.
When you call somebody, you say, "Are you doing an investigation?" If you didn't know what was going on, wouldn't you say, "What investigation?"
Yep.
He knew exactly what was going on, and so for these people to pretend that this guy is, he's an angel and he was just listening, and he didn't know what the president was talking about.
You're talking about the president of Ukraine, as Zelensky. I think I don't think he's corrupt. I think he's terrified. I think his country has been invaded by a one of the superpowers, and is occupied. He's had 14,000 of his own people killed in a literal hot war, and the United States withheld aid for 4 or 5 months. And, that would be enough to flip anybody out. But I agree with you. He clearly knew what was going on. Thanks a lot for the call. Ken in Lafayette, Colorado. Hey, Ken, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Tom.
Hey.
Take you up speakerphone. Excuse me. Question regarding the Steele dossier.
Right.
Some clarification that I'm assuming you'd know. I've been having a Twitter conversation. So what is the history, if you will? Who?
There should be. I'm guessing that there's a Wikipedia page for this, but the Steele dossier started out. In fact, the entire investigation started out as it was funded by one of the Republican campaigns and a newspaper. I believe it was the Washington Examiner, which is a right-wing free newspaper in Washington, D.C. that's owned by some wealthy guy. And I think it was the Marco Rubio campaign. I've got to look this up because this comes up, frequently on TV. And then whichever candidate it was, when they clearly were not going to win the presidency, when they dropped out of the primary, then that company, which had already dug up some dirt on Trump, shopped that dirt to the DNC or to the Clinton campaign. I'm not sure which. At which point they said, "Sure, we'll pick this up from you and run with it." But the key thing, though, so it wasn't the Steele dossier that initiated the FBI investigation. It was the ambassador from Australia calling the FBI himself and saying that George Papadopoulos told me that the Trump campaign has the information, Hillary Clinton has a lot of dirt on Hillary Clinton that they're going to be releasing. That's what started the FBI investigation, and nobody has really challenged that. So the Republicans lie through their teeth when they say the Steele dossier started it. And secondly, the Steele dossier initially was a Republican investigation. And third, the Steele dossier was not a foreign country. There was a foreign person involved, but it was not a foreign country that was being corrupted.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
It's the second day of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. Your opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to actually get out there, get active, do something, tag your it. Your opportunity to help build and share progressive media. Number one, tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. Talk about it in social media. Make a tag at the end of your email address that says, I watch the Thom Hartmann program on Free Speech TV, Dish, Direct, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways. You just think about, hey, we can toss this in, we can toss this. Tell your family about it. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. Something to bring up, maybe even have it on the TV and show people. So let's spread the word. This is, right now, one of the big challenges that Free Speech TV has, of course, is raising enough money to run this network. And, 3-4 times a year, we have to come on the air for 2 or 3 weeks each time and ask for help, or give people an opportunity to help. If we had twice as many viewers, we could do it half as much, right? Because it doesn't cost Free Speech TV anymore to have twice as many viewers. They put the signal up on the satellite or they put it out on the internet, and it really doesn't matter on the internet. It might cost a little more if there's a lot more people watching, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what they would make up in increased fundraising. So please spread the word, right? That's probably the most important thing you can do. But also, we've got to pay the bills. We've got another 3 months here where we've got to pay for the lights and for the electrons to go up to the satellites and right into your home and into your TV. Pay the payrolls and everything else. We need to keep this show on the air. We need to keep this network on the air. And you're the one who can make that happen with a gift right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. I believe that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I've been doing this for so long, I do it from memory. But so please call now. Here are some of the premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, they've got these a bumper sticker that says, "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says, "Nobody is above the law." It's a pretty straightforward design and logo. With a $120 gift, now this, you can break this up $10 a month over 12 months. You get the Free Speech TV t-shirt, Never Again is Now. With the $250 gift, you can sign up for the online study class with Professor Thom. That's a virtual meet and greet where we just connect on a Zoom link, and you can be on camera or not. You can just listen in if you'd prefer. You'll see me on your computer, and it'll be live in real time. It's a video chat thing, and you don't have to have any technical expertise to do this. All you have to have is a computer that's connected to the internet, and the people at Free Speech TV will email you a link, and you just click that link, and everything will pop right up, and you'll be right there. So it's kind of cool. It uses it's Skype or Zoom. I'm pretty sure it's Zoom, but whatever it is, it works really well. We've done several of them now, and they're nice. That's with a $250 gift. With a $360 gift, which again could be split out $30 a month for 3 months, or for 10 months, for 12 months, excuse me, for a year, $30 a month, or $360. You get the Study Up with Professor Thom package, including my book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. This is the book that kind of shook the world of psychology and psychiatry, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I mean, it was extremely, when I first came out with this theory back in the 90s, it was extremely controversial. I did a lot of traveling all around the world, around Australia, around Europe, all across the United States, talking about this. And this is the most recent. It's the first book that I wrote on it, where I laid it out. We took that book and updated the science, wrote a new chapter. Particularly, one of the most important chapters, I think, and something I'd never addressed before, is that I forget whether it's 63 or 67%, but people with ADHD are roughly 2/3 more likely to have sleep problems. And it probably has to do with being high-energy people. I'm one of those people. I know what I'm talking about. And I really did a deep dive into the science and literature on this, and we found that there are things that you can do. And so there's a chapter on sleep now in that book, as well as other new content. So that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for an hour here in the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. But the bottom line is, Free Speech TV needs your help right now. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make your contribution. Help keep this network going. Help keep this show going. You know, please help Free Speech TV. This is such an important television network. It's the only genuine progressive television network on the air. Been around for 17, 18 years. I've been here for more than a decade, I believe. So please help out. Thank you. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The book is The Fifth Risk by Michael Lewis.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So normally it's on Wednesdays, but Wednesday of this week we had hearings wall to wall as we did on Tuesday and Thursday. So Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour today, our Middays with Mark weekly segment. Congressman Pocan is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, along with Pramila Jayapal. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. In the U.S. House of Representatives, his website, Pocan, POCAN.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep, as in Representative, Rep Mark Pocan. Congressman, welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
So one of the big whiny complaints that I'm hearing from snowflake Republicans who occasionally call into the program, but you see them in the media too, is that this impeachment hearing is making it impossible for Congress to do the people's business. Is that true?
Yeah. No, that's something that we get asked. Our local Republicans in Wisconsin are all doing the same talking points that they're doing nationally. And, nothing could be farther from the truth. This is one where they got to be real careful because you can get fact-checked and just slammed down very quickly. We have passed over 275 bipartisan bills out of the House of Representatives that we've sent to the Senate, and I think they've acted on about 15% of them. We passed all 12 appropriation bills in committee, 10 of the 12 appropriation bills on the floor of Congress before the August break. We're still waiting for the Senate to do much of anything on that. We're past the end of the fiscal year. So we've been doing all kinds of stuff. We're going to pass a giant prescription drug bill in the coming weeks. We've been passing bills right and left. The problem is we have a Senate that Tom, this is actually what Mitch McConnell told Nancy Pelosi when they went to meet about the budget. He said, I can't do anything the president doesn't want. So he's giving up his Article I separate branch of government responsibilities, completely giving the car keys to the congressional car to another branch of government.
It's a dear leader.
And we're just waiting for things to happen. So the Republicans, when they say that, it just shows how desperate they are to try to have a different focus because they are just dead wrong on the facts, the numbers, and it's easy to disprove them.
That's astonishing. So for people who might have just been tuning in, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us, taking your calls for the hour. It's the Friday edition of Middays with Mark. And should we pick up some phone calls here?
Oh, absolutely. Love to.
Okay, Steve in St. Genevieve, Missouri. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman Pocan. Hi, Tom. I've been thinking about this. I do like Joe Biden. I wouldn't necessarily pick him, but just on the off chance, if they did find dirt on him and his son, would that really affect the Democratic election?
Well, Steve, first of all, I mean, there's already been several investigations, and there's nothing there. This is Lindsey Graham. I know everyone's going to be shocked, doing the president's bidding once again, as apparently one of his little elves this holiday season, by trying to dig up dirt on the Bidens because we couldn't get, I guess, other foreign leaders to do it.
Yeah, he just requested, just to clarify, Lindsey Graham just yesterday requested of the State Department that they turn over to him their investigation into Biden and Biden's son and all that stuff from during the Obama administration.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So Lindsey Graham is actually trying to, since the president couldn't effectively get the president of the Ukraine or other foreign leaders to do his dirty work, he now has one of his little elves being more than willing to make, he's going
to do it himself.
His boss happy. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
So he's just going to do it himself. And so that's already been disproven, Steve. I think, we just need to hold tight on this. I mean, for real people watching what's going on, it is now completely crystal clear that the president asked a foreign leader to dig up dirt on a political opponent. He admits he did that. He clearly withheld aid to the country until they would announce an investigation on that, wouldn't have a meeting with the president for a photo shoot until he would do this for months. It's not one phone call. For months of activity, he had his administration, including top-ranking people from the vice president to Secretary Pompeo and others involved in this. And now it's crystal clear to anyone who actually wants to listen or think. For the rest, they're going to think what they think no matter what about the president. But for everyone else, I think now we've got that message out there. We need to do our job in the House. I doubt the Senate will do the job they're supposed to, but that's all right. The facts are now out there that we know we have a president who not only has betrayed his oath of office, but has broke the law, and he thinks he's above the law. And I think at the end of the day, that doesn't sit well with people when they have to vote next November.
Shay in Jacksonville, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. Well, now it's afternoon here. I'm in Florida, where we are used to the shenanigans of the Republicans. And I just wanted to ask why we are not talking about protecting our elections to a very high level. Ivanka Trump won patents from China for election machine software. And two, the GOP has decided to ignore all evidence brought forth, and they wholly support Trump no matter what in the impeachment. So do you think that the Democrats just need to make this as a full indictment against the entire GOP and the open corruption that they're all participating in? And I would just love to see the media or the Democrats play the clip with George Stephanopoulos and Trump in the Oval with him saying that he would accept foreign dirt on an opponent. It's nothing new that he is doing.
Right.
So could you please address that? And you all have a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving. And Democrats, get out and support your local chapters. We need everyone on the ground.
Thank you, Shay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think what you're seeing happen, and we watched it this week, even by Republicans who, were considered somewhat reasonable by other standards, people like Will Hurd, that, this is something they are in full damage control mode. There's no way they can defend what the president did. They won't put any witnesses that could prove any innocence because there's no innocence to present. So they've gone after the process. They've gone after the chairperson, and they're going after saying somehow things aren't happening because we're busy doing this, which is is disproven simply by that 275 bills that are bipartisan that we've sent to the Senate that are waiting action because the Senate won't act on things. They're in a bad place. And I think, at the end of the day, when people look at what Mitch McConnell and some of those Republicans in the Senate are going to say, on top of watching the buffoonery of how the Republicans behaved on the committee. I mean, when you have to put Jim Jordan on a committee to be your MVP or pinch hitter, you're not doing so well. And I think the American public really can kind of look at what's happening and realize it's not just Donald Trump who broke the law and thinks he's above the law and wants to get away with this. It's the entire Republican Party is now a cult. And the cult leader is Donald Trump. They're not a conservative political party anymore. They are a cult. And there is going to be, I think, long-term prices to be paid for that.
Mike in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
I have a good day to my question is in regards to all the bills that are presently sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk and the optimistic, hopeful event in 2020 that Congress completely flips Democratic. Are all those bills that are sitting on his desk going to have to go through the House again to be sent back to the Senate? And also, with all the events of this impeachment, with the refusal of subpoenas and so forth, is there any legislation that's in the works to deal with these possible scenarios not to happen again in the future?
Yeah, to the second one, I'm just going to address it pretty quickly, which is, part of the problem is just it's a legal process, and we can't necessarily reform the entire legal process. When the Republicans went after Eric Holder, 7 years later they got resolution on something. That is part of the problem. But it's not easy just to change with a simple law change. So I think you're going to have some of that exist. Some of it we can probably make sure it works better, but some of it's still going to be just through our system of laws. It's going to be difficult. On the other question you asked, Mike, everything would have to be passed again by another House to go to a new House Rep, the new Senate makeup after 2020, should that happen. So you would have to get those bills done. Having said that, once you've got someone's already voted on them, I feel pretty confident that they would pass through the House pretty quickly and we'd be able to get that done.
So just reboot the whole process.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's hope. Let's hope. Knock wood here. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Congressman Pocan is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. His website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And we will be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. And welcome back. Morris in Long Beach, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Congressman, listen, I need you to come to my church on Sunday and get at that sermon you just gave about the Republican cult. We're going to call it the Republican cult, the false disciples. Okay? So that was really outstanding, because that's what they are. But anyway, I want to let you all know that Adam Schiff did a super job with that committee. They tried their best to disrupt it, like they did the underground hearings, and he was firm. He came across real strong, in control. Nancy Pelosi doing a super job, particularly when she said that the president was, what did she call him? She had a name, Jesus, it escaped me. But you guys are doing a great job. But don't stop with this. Now, the next time you impeach him, and there's no law that say you can't go through this again, you go with the emoluments clause. And if they dare bring in that guy, Hunter Biden, then you bring in the president's children when you're going down with the emoluments thing. And thank you, Congressman Pocan. You, my man, keep it going. Talk to you later. You too, Tom.
Thank you, Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Morris. And I agree. Adam Schiff, quite honestly, I don't know how he stays that calm. He must have like the lowest blood pressure in the city of Washington, D.C.
It's like they kept trying to provoke him.
I know.
It was incredible.
He's so good at it. I think I would probably have been not as strong as him in doing what he did. So I give him a lot of credit on it. And Morris, you're right. I mean, I think we just have to get that point out. And I think, again, real people can observe this. The Republicans think that the American people aren't very smart. That's why they put up these lies like, oh, they're not getting anything done because we're stuck in impeachment, and yet, the facts completely counter what they're saying. The fact that they can't defend the president, but they want to talk about process or other things because they know the president broke the law and that what we're doing is the right thing. And I think the American people can understand when someone broke the law. If it doesn't pass the smell test, generally people can tell that, and I think that's what's happening right now. So I appreciate your comments, and I really think we have to get that point across. This is not the Republican Party anymore. I've been in government for 26, 27 years. There's never been a time where Republicans so blindly would follow any one person, even when they're in the middle of breaking laws, and do whatever they say and give up their responsibility as a co-equal branch of government to do things even like a budget, like Mitch McConnell's doing, what he told Nancy Pelosi in her office. That is unprecedented, and I think we just need to make sure we all remember that, not only in November 2020, but in our local elections and as we talk to our local elected officials, we have to hold them accountable.
Yeah. We just have 45 seconds now to the break. My dad, who has passed away now, but was a Republican his whole life, literally to the day he died, would not recognize this Republican Party. He was an Eisenhower Republican. He was a machinist. He was in the Union, all that kind of stuff. It seems to me that the real corruption of the Republican Party happened in the wake of the Buckley, 76 Buckley decision and the 78 First National Bank decision, when the Supreme Court said that billionaires owning politicians or corporations owning politicians was actually protected First Amendment free speech. And all that money poured into the Republican Party in 79 and 80 for the 1980 election for Reagan. And that was when it started. Do you think differently?
No, I think that absolutely was the catalyst, and then you throw on top of it Newt Gingrich and what he did to Congress. Right. I think he was the pivotal point there, that it has changed significantly. And don't forget redistricting, as we say this, too. I just like to always keep that. I think that is one of the most significant issues we've got to address.
Yeah, gerrymandering, in other words.
Gerrymandering, yeah. I'm sorry, gerrymandering. Okay.
Yeah, no, redistricting is just a word that you guys use.
Yeah, it's our process.
Technical term. There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan with us. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. Stick around. In our special, Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Gets to see his taxes. Check it out. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. And Pam in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman.
Hi, Pam.
Hey.
My concern is with impeachment. But first, let me say regarding the Republican Party, for me, they're a political hate group. And whenever, wherever, I want all of them out of office, Tom, and I'm just done with it. I don't even... I think we should just eliminate them. And I mean politically, vote them out of office. Donald Trump is a white nationalist, and as a black woman, that scares me tremendously. Regarding impeachment, Congressman, please make sure the appropriate message gets out. I think we have to talk about the national security. And please tell the public what we need to do, because we have to do some work to ensure that the Senate removes Trump. Now, I know if we put some pressure on these retailers around this Christmas holiday, I think that would apply some pressure. But tell the public, what do we need to do to get our sentiment across? I don't care what the polls say, because, Tom, you see they're saying, well, the polls don't support impeachment. Like crap, they don't.
Yeah.
Because the people want him held accountable. What do we need to do?
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, Pam, so the 2 points. First of all, I really appreciate bringing up the national security point, because at the end of the day, that's what this was risking our national security by making a president or any individual's political goals, personal political goals, go over the country's national security interest. Congress had approved funding for the Ukraine, an ally, because they needed it, because Russia is dealing very directly with them, and we're not. He held up that money in order to get political dirt for his personal political gain, and that was a national security risk, and he thinks he's above the law off of that. So it's so important that that part is mentioned. Secondly, I think what the public's role is, especially in getting the Senate to do this, is everyone has to reach out to their U.S. senators and make their voices heard, because even though I think they're going to likely operate in a very partisan way for the Republicans, because we've already heard how Mitch McConnell is giving up his responsibilities as a separate branch of government when it comes to our budget right now, I think they're going to act the same way, but they need to know that they're acting counter to where the public support is. So people absolutely need to reach out, and I would even say reach out early and often to those senators to make sure that they understand there's an intensity to where the public stands.
Bill in Madison, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, gentlemen. I want to thank both of you first for the work you do. It's very frustrating, but it's very worthwhile to know that, you know, justice and freedom is still out there somewhere. Two visuals kind of stand out for me. One, Elise walking up. I can't remember who the representative.
Elise Stefanik.
Yeah, and who the representative was, who she went up during a break and was going to greet him, and his look afterwards was quite stone cold, and he was befuddled that she would come over. The second is Lindsey Graham walking away from a vet. I saw that online today, and he was just asking Lindsey to uphold the oath that he took. Along dovetailing with that, please tell me that there are going to be floods of times that people go out and do town halls during their breaks, because I don't see the GOP doing that, and the Dems need to show that, the public is on their side. So I'll hang up and listen. Thanks again for your help.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, I agree with you. A lot of the visuals on the Republican side, it's been pretty awful. Even, and Bill's a constituent because Madison's in my district, one of our more responsible Republicans in my home state of Wisconsin, Tom, was spinning that myth just today about that we're not doing anything because we're somehow impaired because of the impeachment process. And as I've explained those numbers to you, it's completely false. So even people who generally are of good will are acting poorly because they're being instructed to by their leadership. They know that their fate is largely tied to the president's. But rather than standing up and doing the right thing as a co-equal branch of government, they're just, again, becoming this cult and doing whatever the president wants. So I think those visuals are really important. And, Bill, I think, one of the things we're doing is we make sure, and whenever people get back home, we're talking to our local press, because that way on local news, people will see us talking about the impeachment, putting the truth out there. And I think when people see that, first of all, they're seeing the visuals nationally, but then when they hear it from people they know from their communities, their local member of Congress, I think that's the most effective thing we can do, and we're going to keep doing between now and the Senate taking this up.
Typically, do members of the House, at least Democrats anyway, do town halls during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays?
No, because people are not around and they don't attend. So I think, you'll see a new batch start up again probably about the time from what my guess is, should the Senate be taking this up, that's probably a chance you'll see that happening.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman. Hang on.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It is Middays with Mark, Friday edition. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan right after this break here at the bottom of the hour. It's the second day of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. Your opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to actually get out there, get active, do something, tag your it. Your opportunity to help build and share progressive media. Number one, tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. Talk about it in social media. Make a tag at the end of your email address that says, I watch the Thom Hartmann program on Free Speech TV, Dish, Direct, you know, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways. You just think about, hey, you know, we can toss this in, we can toss this. Tell your family about it. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. Something to bring up, maybe even have it on the TV and show people. So let's spread the word. This is, you know, right now, one of the big challenges that Free Speech TV has, of course, is raising enough money to run this network. And, you know, 3-4 times a year, we have to come on the air for 2 or 3 weeks each time and ask for help, you know, or give people an opportunity to help. If we had twice as many viewers, we could do it half as much, right? Because it doesn't cost Free Speech TV anymore to have twice as many viewers. They put the signal up on the satellite or they put it out on the internet, and it really doesn't matter. On the internet, it might cost a little more if there's a lot more people watching, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what they would make up in increased fundraising. So please spread the word, right? That's probably the most important thing you can do. But also, we've got to pay the bills. We've got another 3 months here where we got to pay for the lights and for the electrons to go up to the satellites and right into your home and into your TV. You know, pay the payrolls and everything else. We need to keep this show on the air. We need to keep this network on the air. And you're the one who can make that happen with a gift right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. I believe that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I've been doing this so long, I do it from memory. But so please call now. Here are some of the premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, they've got these a bumper sticker that says, "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says, "Nobody is above the law." It's a pretty straightforward design and logo. With a $120 gift, now this, you can break this up $10 a month over 12 months. You get the Free Speech TV t-shirt, Never Again is Now. With the $250 gift, you can sign up for the online study class with Professor Thom. That's a virtual meet and greet where we just connect on a Zoom link, and you can be on camera or not. You can just listen in if you'd prefer. You'll see me on your computer, and it'll be live in real time. It's a video chat thing, and you don't have to have any technical expertise to do this. All you have to have is a computer that's connected to the internet. And the people at Free Speech TV will email you a link, and you just click that link, and everything will pop right up, and you'll be right there. So it's kind of cool. It uses it's Skype or Zoom. I'm pretty sure it's Zoom, but whatever it is, it works really well. We've done several of them now, and they're nice. That's with a $250 gift. With a $360 gift, which again could be split out $30 a month for 3 months, or for 10 months, for 12 months, excuse me, for a year, $30 a month, or $360. You get the Study Up with Professor Thom package, including my book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. This is the book that kind of shook the world of psychology and psychiatry, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I mean, it was extremely, you know, when I first came out with this theory back in the 90s, it was extremely controversial. I did a lot of traveling all around the world, around Australia, around Europe, all across the United States, talking about this. And this is the most recent. It's the first book that I wrote on it, where I laid it out. We took that book and updated it, updated the science, wrote a new chapter. Particularly, one of the most important chapters, I think, and something I'd never addressed before, is that I forget whether it's 63 or 67%, but people with ADHD are roughly 2/3 more likely to have sleep problems. And it probably has to do with being high-energy people. I'm one of those people. I know what I'm talking about. And I really did a deep dive into the science and literature on this, and we found that there are things that you can do. And so there's a chapter on sleep now in that book, as well as other new content. So that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for an hour here in the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. But the bottom line is, Free Speech TV needs your help right now. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make your contribution. Help keep this network going. Help keep this show going. You know, please help Free Speech TV. This is such an important television network. It's the only genuine progressive television network on the air. Been around for 17, 18 years. I've been here for more than a decade, I believe. So please help out. Thank you. Welcome back. It's Middays with Mark, Congressman Mark Pocan, taking your calls for the hour. And Michael in Princeton, Minnesota. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, thank you for taking the call, and thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Michael.
This morning I happened to catch C-SPAN, and they had a town hall on there by Sensenbrenner. I know you mentioned somebody on one of your constituents had one. I don't know if you were referring to him or somebody else. But one of the people got up in the audience and said that they appreciated him coming there under a fairly hostile condition. So apparently that district is ready to be flipped. I don't know how gerrymandered Wisconsin is, but when Sensenbrenner talked to one of the people, that was questioning him and said, well, maybe you need to watch more Fox News. And the audience just, they turned against him right away. And there was only one or two people that got up and spoke in favor of Trump. So do we have, or do you guys over there, I'm in Minnesota, do you have a representative ready to go against him? Thank you.
So, Michael, I wish we weren't as gerrymandered as we are in Wisconsin. In 2016, because it's a better way of looking at the 2018, because I believe it or not, I had no opponent in 2018, so that skews numbers. But in 2016, we had 100,000 more people vote for a Democrat for Congress in Wisconsin than a Republican, but we got 3 of the 8 seats. So we are very gerrymandered, and the most gerrymandered district happens to be, ding, ding, Jim Sensenbrenner's district. Now, he is stepping down, and there'll be a new representative from that district, but it's probably, I believe, not last cycle again because I had no opponent, but the previous 2 cycles I had more votes than any Democrat in the country, not because of the percent of the district, just because of the intensity of turnout. His is just the polar opposite. He got more votes than any Republican in the country because of turnout. So unfortunately, that's probably not one we're going to flip. In Wisconsin, we got to deal with gerrymandering, all the more why I think in a lot of states we got to deal with gerrymandering as a top-of-mind issue.
Helen in Fairmont, West Virginia. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Helen.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Just fine. Go ahead with your question, please.
I wanted to ask if Trump is impeached by the House, which it looks like he will be, can he still pardon people?
I believe, I have no reason not to believe what I'm going to give as an answer. Tom, correct me if you know anything differently, but, if we just impeach him in the House and the Senate doesn't do anything to remove him, I don't think any of his powers change whatsoever. So he would still be in a position to pardon people, and I think there's a number of people around him, since so many people around him seem to go to jail, that are kind of counting on that. So I think that's absolutely a possibility.
What I know about this is that it's never been adjudicated. It's never been before the Supreme Court. But Article 2, Section 2 does say he shall have, powers of the president. He shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, comma, except in cases of impeachment. Now, I don't know, and I haven't been able to find anybody who knows exactly what that means. Does that mean that when the president's being impeached, he can't pardon people who might testify against him? Or does that mean that if a United States senator is being impeached, he can't pardon that senator or something like that? I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either. It's a good question, but I don't see if the Senate didn't do the job that would essentially say the person is removed. I think just like Bill Clinton still had powers of pardon, I think you'd see the same thing happen with Donald Trump.
Yeah, once the vote was over, I think that there's no doubt that he gets that power back. Alan, in Minneapolis, listening on AM 950, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good to talk to you both. I just had two quick points I wanted to make. The first is I go right along with what you guys say when you call this a cult, and I think we really need to call this out on television whenever possible. You know, any Congress people that make it onto TV need to emphasize that. And the same goes for something Tom was going for earlier, which was that I've heard you talk about this before, that the center of American politics is on the left, as Robert Reich wrote. And I think that is one of the most important articles I've read in this era. I think that people like Warren and Sanders are being marginalized because they're being called far left when they're actually mainstream. And we really, really need to push that. I think that's so important right now. And I just wanted to leave that with you guys, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, Alan, I'll tell you, I think this is why progressives think in a similar way, and you are exactly where the Progressive Caucus is at. We've been very frustrated for probably the last 4 to 6 weeks with this narrative that somehow Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are too progressive to get elected in this country, when poll after poll after poll, whether it be choice, gun violence, taxing the wealthy, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, go down the list. All of those are at minimum 55, more likely 60 to 70% public support issues, not among Democrats in a primary, but among the general public, that means those are the mainstream ideas, not what somehow some of the special interests want to change the narrative a little bit as they're looking at our Democratic primary and trying to say who can and can't win, not based on what you and I are talking about. So right now, Pramila Jayapal, who's my co-chair, and I are taking this issue very seriously. We're actually right now crafting a piece that we're trying to make sure that we can start having to talk about on this very issue, because neither one of us have endorsed anyone. We just want to push back on this very, very false narrative that's done to basically take down Bernie and Elizabeth. And the reality is that people are lying and really stretching the poll numbers to say anything other than progressive values are mainstream values.
Yeah, just before the debate, night before last, I was watching MSNBC and Steve Schmidt was on. He's a Republican consultant, right? And he says, if Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, I'm paraphrasing from memory here, if Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren are the party's nominees, then Donald Trump is going to walk away with this thing. And Claire McCaskill is sitting next to him and she's nodding her head. And she says, yes, I think that would be a real problem. And it's like, I'm screaming at the TV going, that's such BS. And it's just, in fact, it caused me to say, screw this. And I went to CNN, and they had Van Jones on there, who will push back against that kind of crap. And Louise and I just gave up on MSNBC. We listened to Van Jones, or we listened to CNN for all the commentary afterwards. I mean, it's just infuriating.
Well, and I just saw a national poll this week, Tom, and I don't remember who did the poll, but it was a national presidential poll where the only person beating Trump in their poll was Bernie Sanders. I believe Elizabeth Warren was tied, and then after that came, I think, Buttigieg and Biden losing to Trump by different percents. Yeah. Again, if all the information says that, people are just putting out a completely false narrative because, again, a lot of the special interests don't want it to be true. It's just the American people want it to be true, and I think we have to push back more as progressives on those points.
Yeah, I'm with you. Bernie in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, good afternoon from near Pittsburgh. Okay, I voted for the Democrats last year to give them power, and I don't feel that they're using it. Mulvaney and those surrounding the president, you never hear anything, except the courts. And to my knowledge, there is a jail in the bottom of the Capitol. And if the Republicans were in power, they would do anything. Like with Garland, I just can't get over Garland right now. I mean, they'll do anything to stay in power. Why aren't the Democrats going after Mulvaney and all the other people around Trump and putting them in jail for a day or two and let them think things over?
Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie, so I've probably addressed this a couple dozen times on the show, so I'll do a short version, but I'd ask you maybe to Google it and you can get a little more in depth about it. But it's not as easy as that. It's not like you can just throw someone in a jail because, first of all, we have to have funds appropriated, and that means you have to, with the House and the Senate, have funds appropriated. You have to change the House rules as well. So it may be that there is a former jail there. It's not like you can instantly use it. On the legal side, for example, criminal contempt has to go through the Attorney General's office. There's no way this Attorney General is going to do that. Civil contempt has to go through the court system. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, there was a case where the Republicans went after Eric Holder, got resolved maybe 3-4 months ago after 7 years. None of these things happen very fast. So what we're doing is we've been able to very successfully, to Adam Schiff's credit, getting a lot of people to testify that Donald Trump didn't want to testify. And for those who don't, we're going to add that to the articles of impeachment because people are trying to obstruct the investigation by not showing up. So we're not getting things that we're not getting in other places, but it's not as easy as some people fantasize how we can do it.
Yeah, if only it were, huh?
I wish. I wish.
And I think that is this something you think that may be addressed in the next Congress?
Well, some of it we can't. Like the legal system, you can't. Some things you might be able to, but we should really have Jerry Nadler write this up because Jerry did a wonderful job of explaining just why it's so difficult.
Like authorizing inherent contempt or something.
Right. Jerry would be a great guy.
Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Maybe I can get Jerry Nadler to come on the program sometime and talk about it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Becky in Portland, Oregon. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Hartmann. Congressman Pocan, I was just wondering if you thought that there would be any follow-up or investigation into Congressman Nunes's connection with Lev Parnas that was added to the record of the impeachment inquiry by Congressman Swalwell.
Yeah, Becky, I couldn't tell you offhand. That was very, very recent. But every time there's one of these due paths that's opened up as we have different people testify. Don't forget, we've got about 6 different committees that have some oversight in this area that can take on some of that work, and they're going to continue doing what they've been doing in that area. I can't tell you which committee might or what that path would be, but I think every time we've had a new road opened up, someone has gone down that to find out what else is in there, and I think this is certainly one of the possibilities when it comes to Devin Nunes.
Jim in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Congressman. I recently met with Daniel Sheehan, who wrote the articles of impeachment for Nixon, and Adam Schiff is my congressman. And I asked Daniel point blank if Adam asked him if he would help write the articles of impeachment for Trump, and he said yes. And then he said something else, if everyone should contribute. And I was wondering if you could begin an emoluments investigation, you yourself. And we need comprehensive articles of impeachment.
Yeah, Jim, so specifically on emoluments, that already has been it's under the jurisdiction of judiciary, and they've been doing some work, and they're going to continue doing work on that. I think right now we are in a moment, this very specific situation is what's moving expeditiously, and I think this is what likely will come before Congress in December. But that doesn't say that all of the investigations, whether it be emoluments, whether it be the tax records, whether it be still work within the Mueller investigation around Russia, won't be continuing by the committees that have that proper jurisdiction. It's not really up to an individual member to do that, but it's up to the committees, and Judiciary absolutely has been working on and will continue to work on emoluments.
Paul in Portland, Oregon, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. I'd like to ask about long-term strategies and way to set up goals that are appropriate. I grew up in the religious mainstream, and at the end of the service, they'd say, hold fast to that which is good. How do we hold fast when we have a world that is spinning out of control? The governor of Oregon, when they got him out of office, Kitzhaber, it took a long time, and it's more of a marathon than a sprint to get through our constitutional processes. How do you think our focus should be so that the people in the center of the right wing aren't alienated by what's going on in our country?
Great question, Paul. Let's get the answer here.
Sure, Paul. I just think we need to keep our focus on what people talk about, which are the issues that affect them and their families at a core level. You know, do they... Oh, I'm going to run out of time here, but I think there's ways that we can absolutely do that, and we are doing that. And I'm not too concerned on that front, Paul, to be perfectly honest.
You were talking about keeping a focus on healthcare and education,
healthcare and their economic issues. What the polling has shows us, again, are those people are there in a core progressive issues. As long as we continue to talk about those issues, we're talking to voters.
That's great. Congressman Mark Pocan, we'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Congressman Mark Pocan is taking your calls for the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And let's see here. Bart in Bellevue, Washington. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Mark and Tom, and foggy Bellevue here. So I have 2 points, if I may. Number one, on the getting the message out. You did an excellent job, Mark, on getting the message out with the facts about the bills passed and all that. And I think it's time that we had a thing like Huxley used to call point counterpoint, and you get both sides in the same room at the same time, facing to each other, and giving points out there without them having 5 minutes, and then you have 5 minutes. No, it's got to be back and forth so people can see who is telling the truth. That's number one. And you got to get on Republican media to do that. I'm just wondering, what's your response to that? And I have one more question, if I may.
Well, we have one per caller, Bart. There's a whole bunch of people behind you.
Yeah, Bart, well, let me address that. I think you're right. In fact, that's generally what the media is for, right? They're supposed to then, when people have different positions on an issue, if there are facts that you can put out there about that, that's what the press is supposed to do. Fortunately for us right now, the Republicans are so factless that this current argument they have has absolutely no grounding, that nothing is happening because of the impeachment. Right now, the only committee that's dealing with this is the Intelligence Committee. We have 20 other standing committees that are passing bills, and we've been passing them on the floor of Congress. In fact, 275 bipartisan bills with a bipartisan vote that have gone to the Senate. Things like overall bills we've passed have been raising the minimum wage, the Equality Act, dealing with paycheck equity, women making 80 cents on the dollar to men, getting back into the Paris Climate Agreement, gun violence prevention, prescription drug bills to lower the cost of prescription drugs, bills to protect people with pre-existing conditions so they can keep their health insurance, and on and on and on. And I think that is a really good point, Bart. The more we get that across and people can see what Mitch McConnell is sitting on and refusing to take up because Donald Trump is immobilized right now by the impeachment, then I think we can really convince people that not only are they not telling the truth, but they're probably not telling the truth about a whole lot of other things.
Would it be a good idea to create a website and a whole meme and campaign, something like called, Republican obstruction, and maybe even some billboards, but certainly a website that just basically lists what you just said? I don't have that, list handy in front of me. If I did, I would be reciting it every day, and I don't know where to go to find it.
Yeah, Tom, so we just actually got that new number this week, and whatever we have, I will be glad to share with you.
Yeah, the names of the bills, or the purpose of the bills, rather.
Yeah, because we had 240 up to the August break, and I think it was 238, actually, that I was talking about when I did my town halls around that period of time. And the Senate had only passed 60 bills during that same time, and they only taken up, I think it was 15% of the bills we've sent over there. So, right. I mean, clearly we've been doing a ton of stuff, including, our fiscal year in September 30th. We passed every single appropriation bill out of committee, 10 of the 12 on the floor of Congress prior to that August break, and the Senate hadn't done a single thing yet. So it's almost like they live in this double-speak world where whatever they're saying actually is what they're doing, but that's the world under Donald Trump, right? Yeah. And then when you throw in the words like fake news,
but we have to tell people about this. I mean, we have to tell people about this. Frank in Woodland, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Happy holidays, Congressman and Tom.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. My pleasure. Quickly, I just want to say, first of all, Chairman Schiff just ran circles around Midnight Run Nunez. That was brilliant. Just the entire the other day. But more to my point, are you guys going to open up investigations, at least the lower chamber, as far as this whole deal with Secretary Perry? I mean, at least the ethics, or maybe the IG or something, or regarding the deal that he worked out for one of his campaign donors, if you're aware of that or familiar with it.
Yeah.
In Ukraine.
Yeah, Frank. Sure. In general, Frank, I think as we get new information that's been coming out as we do these various hearings, there are 6 committees that probably have the most direct jurisdiction over anything in Trump land, so to speak, and they all take on various pieces that fall under their jurisdiction. They've been doing this already, and they will continue to do this. Right now, we're in a very specific moment around the call and the several months of activity in Ukraine where the president has basically withheld their aid or wouldn't do a photo shoot with them until they announced an investigation after Joe Biden so he could get dirt on a political opponent. He wanted them to manufacture that dirt, or at least the appearance of that. And I think that's what we're acting on right now, but everything else is going to continue. It's not like the committees are suddenly going to stop doing what's under their purview. They're going to keep doing it, and I'm especially looking at things like the Emoluments Clause violations. I think the president has made a ton of money, including from the government, in an improper way, as you should be president. His tax returns, clearly this guy's got something to hide, and I think once those are public, that's going to be interesting, and a whole lot of other areas, including what happened and was covered in the Mueller report. So it's not like we don't have the work to do. It's probably more of a capacity issue on how much we can get done.
Jan in Bradenton, Florida. We have less than a minute. A real quick question for Congressman Pocan.
Hey, I appreciate this, Tom. And Mark, I appreciate Congressman Pocan.
Mark is fine.
Respect.
Your question.
I have a quick question. Yeah, I want to know, does anybody see the problem with Pete Buttigieg cozying up with Mark Zuckerberg with his big support behind the Republicans and Donald Trump?
I don't know if I have a specific point to say on that, other than if I can take it a slightly different direction, is, our concern right now, and by our, I mean the CPC, is that we can get this proper information out there that maybe some candidates are putting out there, whether it be a tax on Medicare for all or the Green New Deal or other issues that have wide popular support. We want to make sure people realize the public really want these, and it's the special interest that pushing back, and hopefully candidates don't repeat special interest talking points or GOP talking points when they're running in a Democratic primary.
Congressman Pocan, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, of course, Tom. Thank you, as always.
Great talking with you.
Same here.
And we'll be back with Lamar Waldron. We're going to be talking about the anniversary of John Kennedy's assassination today.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. It's the second day of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. Your opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to actually get out there, get active, do something, tag your it. Your opportunity to help build and share progressive media. Number one, tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. Talk about it in social media. Make a tag at the end of your email address that says, I watch the Thom Hartmann program on Free Speech TV, Dish, Direct, you know, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways. You just think about it, you know, we can toss this in, we can toss this. Tell your family about it. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. Something to bring up, maybe even have it on the TV and show people. So let's spread the word. This is, you know, right now, one of the big challenges that Free Speech TV has, of course, is raising enough money to run this network. And, you know, 3-4 times a year, we have to come on the air for 2 or 3 weeks each time and ask for help, you know, or give people an opportunity to help. If we had twice as many viewers, we could do it half as much, right? Because it doesn't cost Free Speech TV anymore to have twice as many viewers. They put the signal up on the satellite or they put it out on the internet, and it really doesn't matter. On the internet, it might cost a little more if there's a lot more people watching, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what they would make up in increased fundraising. So please spread the word, right? That's probably the most important thing you can do. But also, we've got to pay the bills. We've got another 3 months here where we got to pay for the lights and for the electrons to go up to the satellites and right into your home and into your TV. You know, pay the payrolls and everything else. We need to keep this show on the air. We need to keep this network on the air. And you're the one who can make that happen with a gift right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. I believe that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I've been doing this so long, I do it from memory. But so please call now. Here are some of the premiums that Free Speech TV is offering with a $20 gift. They've got these a bumper sticker that says, Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken. With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says nobody is above the law. It's a pretty straightforward design and logo. With a $120 gift, now this, you can break this up $10 a month over 12 months. You get the Free Speech TV t-shirt, Never Again is Now. With the $250 gift, you can sign up for the online study class with Professor Thom. That's a virtual meet and greet where we just connect on a Zoom link, and you can be on camera or not. You can just listen in if you'd prefer. You'll see me on your computer, and it'll be live in real time. It's a video chat thing, and you don't have to have any technical expertise to do this. All you have to have is a computer that's connected to the internet, and the people at Free Speech TV will email you a link, and you just click that link, and everything will pop right up, and you'll be right there. So it's kind of cool. It uses it's Skype or Zoom. I'm pretty sure it's Zoom, but whatever it is, it works really well. We've done several of them now, and they're nice. That's with a $250 gift. With a $360 gift, which again could be split out $30 a month for 3 months, or for 10 months, for 12 months, excuse me, for a year, $30 a month, or $360. You get the Study Up with Professor Thom package, including my book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. This is the book that kind of shook the world of psychology and psychiatry, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I mean, it was extremely, when I first came out with this theory back in the 90s, it was extremely controversial. I did a lot of traveling all around the world, around Australia, around Europe, all across the United States, talking about this. And this is the most recent. It's the first book that I wrote on it, where I laid it out. We took that book and updated it, updated the science, wrote a new chapter. Particularly, one of the most important chapters, I think, and something I'd never addressed before, is that I forget whether it's 63 or 67%, but people with ADHD are roughly 2/3 more likely to have sleep problems. And it probably has to do with being high-energy people. I'm one of those people. I know what I'm talking about. And I really did a deep dive into the science and literature on this, and we found that there are things that you can do. And so there's a chapter on sleep now in that book, as well as other new content. So that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for an hour here in the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. But the bottom line is, Free Speech TV needs your help right now. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make your contribution. Help keep this network going. Help keep this show going. Please help Free Speech TV. This is such an important television network. It's the only genuine progressive television network on the air. Been around for 17, 18 years. I've been here for more than a decade, I believe. So please help out. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to our third hour. Today marks 56 years, as John Fugelsang tweeted this morning, of people believing that one bullet caused 7 wounds on 2 men. It is I shouldn't laugh, it's a tragic anniversary, actually. The 56th anniversary of the assassination of President John Kennedy. And to look at why is Donald Trump still withholding so many of these JFK assassination files, many that actually involve Watergate. So I wanted to get my old buddy Lamar Waldron back, my old friend and collaborator. He and I worked on 2 books together, Ultimate Sacrifice and Legacy of Secrecy. Today we're going to be touching on Lamar's book, Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. and his other book, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. And Lamar, welcome back.
Great to be with you again, Tom. It seems like there's always something new to talk about.
Yeah, well, this is amazing, you know, Trump and all this. But let's start at the beginning. What's the current status of these still unreleased JFK assassination files?
Well, there's one date that everyone agrees on, and that is that Donald Trump delayed releasing. So all these files were supposed to come out a couple of years ago. Congress had, done all these investigations, and they had passed this JFK Act back in 1992 unanimously in the wake of the Oliver Stone JFK movie. And so 4.5 million pages of files were released over the years, but all the rest were supposed to be released a couple of years ago. And so, unfortunately, Donald Trump, and people thought they might be released literally that day. But Donald Trump punted once, and then he punted again. And so the new date to supposedly release all the files is October the 26th, 2021.
Oh, geez, after he may even be long gone. So why would Trump care? I mean, why is he still keeping these files secret? How does this, what's in it for him, or what might hurt him if they're released?
Well, and to understand that, let's talk about the number of files, because so officially there are there's almost 16,000 assassination records censored, still withheld, in whole or part, mostly by the FBI and CIA. But now those are, the official word is almost 16,000 assassination records. Now, I've seen one record be 500 pages, be 200 pages. There's no telling how long, your record and my record is at the CIA, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, who knows how many hundreds of thousands of pages that is. Now, that's the official total. The unofficial total that NBC revealed back in the late 90s, back when we thought we had most of them except for a few thousand, was millions. So, and people will hear today as we go through exactly why there could be not thousands, but millions of pages of records still unreleased. So that's the numbers we're talking about. It's massive.
Yeah.
Even if you look at the official number, it's big. If you look at the unofficial number that NBC News reported, it's massive. So you ask, why would Trump care? So I only recently realized, you and I usually talk about the JFK assassination every November, and then in June we usually talk about Watergate, on the Watergate anniversary. But it's really only in the last few days I realized as I was getting ready for this show and to maybe finish the article I've been working on for 3 years about the top 10 JFK assassination files that are still withheld, I realized how many of the still withheld files, in fact, the vast majority of the still withheld JFK assassination files relate in some way to Watergate. So originally I had thought a couple years ago, well, Trump must be worried the FBI or the CIA have dirt on him, and they're none too subtly threatening to release it, so he better go along with holding these files. But I've realized, and now that we're in the middle of impeachment, it just, jumped out at me. My God, most of the JFK assassination files still secret, involve Watergate in one way or the other, and now that we're mired right in the middle of impeachment, yeah, that becomes really clear. And as we go through, and you and I have talked before, and I'll hit the high points as we go through, it was Nixon that first, said that Trump was going to be president someday. I mean, it was Roger Stone who introduced, the recently convicted Roger Stone, that introduced Trump to Nixon. Nixon saw in Trump a man who could continue on with the criminal activities and illicit money making that Nixon himself had perfected so well in his long political career. So Trump is very definitely and has inherited the mantle of Richard Nixon. And I think Trump realizes, and I think he even realized a year or two ago, because he knew the crimes he committed, Trump did, to win the election, and I'm sure he knew through Roger Stone the crimes that Trump had committed to win both election in 1968 and then re-election in 72.
Yeah. So it being the anniversary of Kennedy's assassination, and we're 12 minutes into the show, let's very quickly, what's the best way to help our listeners understand exactly who killed Kennedy and why, and how that relates to Watergate?
Let's start in 1960, and I know JFK was killed in 1963, but if we start in 1960 and take a snapshot there before we go to 1963, your listeners will not only understand much better who killed JFK, but they'll also understand where Watergate started, because in many ways Watergate and the JFK assassination both started in 1960. So that would be a great place to start if you want me to jump right in.
Go for it.
Okay. So basically Richard Nixon in 1960 was the vice president for President Eisenhower. And Richard Nixon had used the mafia in his political career to get elected and reelected from the time he ran for Congress and the Senate, then for vice president. I mean, he was just thick as thieves with the mafia, the L.A. mafia. Mickey Cohen admitted, who was the big Los Angeles mob boss back in the 40s and early 50s, admitted giving Nixon all this money. Nixon's top political hatchet man advisor, Murray Chotiner, was, and Chotiner's brother, they were basically mafia lawyers for the L.A. mafia's bookies. So Nixon had mafia support from day one. He had helped to get Eisenhower to drag their heels on the mafia and going after them. So that created the opening for Senator John F. Kennedy in the late 1950s to start going after the mafia with his brother, chief counsel on a Senate committee, Bobby Kennedy. They went after the mafia. That's what made Kennedy famous, was going after the mafia and the mafia's ally and money man, Jimmy Hoffa. And JFK announced his race for president in the same room where he held all these hearings, and they would try to get people like Santo Trafficante to testify. Trafficante would hide out in Cuba, but they would drag Sam Giancana. They would drag Sam Giancana wasn't a godfather. He was the mob boss of Chicago. But they would drag the godfather of Texas and Louisiana, Carlos Marcello, and grill them. And so the mob just hated the Kennedys. And the Kennedys were running on an anti-mafia, let's put Hoffa away platform. So the mafia clearly, Kennedy getting elected was the worst thing that could happen to them. So they threw all their support to Richard Nixon. Now, Nixon was also trying to get rid of Fidel Castro. Nixon loved dictators. He had loved the dictator of Cuba, Batista. Nixon even had business interest in Cuba, illicit ones. But, of course, Castro came along with a lot of other Cuban revolutionaries, took over, ran Batista out. So Nixon wanted to get rid of Castro. Castro even went to Washington, talked to Nixon, literally begged for help from the United States because Batista had stolen most of the Cuban treasury. And instead, he just got a lecture from Nixon, and Nixon immediately after the meeting started working with the CIA to say, let's kill Fidel. But by the summer of 1960, just months before the election, Nixon had to ratchet that up. So he literally ordered the CIA to work with the mafia, in particular Santo Trafficante, the godfather of Florida, and a guy named Johnny Roselli, who worked for Sam Giancana. They wanted Trafficante because Trafficante had the casinos in Cuba. And also helping in that was Carlos Marcello. So there was a package deal that was done. Nixon was going to stall charges against Jimmy Hoffa because the Kennedys had exposed what a crook he was. And the mafia would give Nixon $1 million to help him win because they were terrified of Kennedy winning, and the mafia was going to help to kill Fidel Castro right before the election. That was going to be the big October surprise that would help elect the mob's candidate, Richard Nixon.
And that's what became the Bay of Pigs invasion later, right?
Well, that led to that, and then three Watergate figures, E. Howard Hunt, Bernard Barker, and Frank Sturgis, worked on those CIA mafia plots with the CIA and the mafia to try to kill Fidel Castro before the election for Richard Nixon. And all three of them.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And all three of them, very quick,
later on show up in Watergate. They
there
are key Watergate figures.
There you go. We'll be right back with Lamar Waldron. So, Lamar, after Nixon lost the election, what happened to these CIA mafia plots that were started during the election year of 1960 to help Richard Nixon beat Jack Kennedy?
Well, I should point out the mafia came very close. They got one of their men who worked with Johnny Roselli, a wireman from the Chicago Mafia, who was also the #2 man in the Cook County, Chicago Sheriff's Department. They actually got him inside Castro's office before the election with some CIA poison. It didn't work out, though. They had another attempt that didn't work out through one of Castro's mistresses. So they came real
attempts
close.
to assassinate Castro.
Right, to assassinate Castro. They came real close. But so after Kennedy gets sworn in, he is never told about these plots. And the CIA continues them. So they sell him this bill of goods on the Bay of Pigs, which could have never worked because a few thousand Cuban exiles could never defeat the entire Cuban army and militia, right? But the CIA was certain that Castro would be dead because Trafficante and Roselli and Marcello would make sure of that. But because E. Howard Hunt was a career CIA officer, kind of a medium-level CIA guy. He didn't like a couple of the liberals that the Kennedys wanted in the new Cuban government if they'd been able to depose Castro. So he quit right before the Bay of Pigs invasion. So the assassination wasn't carried out. So it was just a big mess. But guess what? The CIA continued those plots without telling JFK and Bobby. Bobby and JFK briefly found out in May of '62, in hindsight, that there had been plots. They promised they would never do it again without telling the Kennedys, Bobby being the Attorney General by then. And, of course, the CIA, in particular a gentleman by the name of Richard Helms, who headed covert operations in the CIA, continued those plots into 1963 without telling the president and without even telling JFK's new CIA director, John McCone. So those plots involving the mafia, the same mobsters that the Kennedys are going after, great guns. I mean, the Kennedys didn't just promise to go after the mafia when JFK was elected. If he was elected, they really went after them. They deported Marcello, who had to sneak back in. They were pressuring not just Trafficante but his family. I mean, the mob's backs were literally against the wall in 1963. So that's the situation there. But now Castro was still in power too. The Kennedys weren't about to use the mobsters they were going after to try to kill Fidel. I mean, that wasn't what they were about anyway, right? They wanted to bring democracy to Cuba, not just install another dictator like Nixon. So as you and I were the first people to ever discover and report, and you fully deserve half the credit for this, the #3 man in Cuba, the highest black official in Cuba, the head of the Cuban army, reached out to JFK in May of 1963, 6 months before JFK was assassinated, and said, look, if you'll back me, I will overthrow Fidel Castro, and I'll work with your people, and we'll set up a coalition government, and we'll bring democracy to Cuba. And so that's what JFK and Bobby were very much concerned with in 1963, was overthrowing Fidel with the head of the Cuban army and going after the mafia. But those two things would prove deadly.
We're talking to Lamar Waldron, and he's the author of numerous books. Most recently, where did it go here? Watergate, The Hidden History, and The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. And we'll be right back. So, welcome back. So, Lamar, 1960, Richard Nixon reaches out to the mafia, who has supported him his entire political career, and says, if I'm going to beat Jack Kennedy, and he's vice president of the United States at the time, he says, if I'm going to beat Jack Kennedy, I need to be able to take down Castro, because that was the big hot thing that was in the news. Castro had taken Cuba communist. And so he hires the mafia to kill Castro. It doesn't work out, and Nixon loses the election. Jack Kennedy comes in. He's aggressively prosecuting the very mafia and many of the very same mafia figures that Nixon was working with to kill Castro. Those plots to kill Castro operating out of the CIA continue between the CIA and the mafia, and the Kennedys are unaware of them. We get up to 1963, and in May of 1963, the head of the Cuban army, the number 3 most powerful guy in Cuba, African-American, reaches out to Bobby Kennedy and says, if you guys can succeed in killing Castro, I will help you take over the political control of this island and turn it into a democracy. I think that's where we were just a moment ago.
You've done an amazing job summarizing, and I do want to let people know, in our first 3 books, there are a total of 5,000 source endnotes documenting everything we're talking about. And you and I personally talked to more than 25 associates of John and Robert Kennedy, people who worked on these plans.
Yep. In fact, one of the guys who ran one of these plans.
Yeah, so we're not just theory. I mean, this is why. I mean, I even have helped get thousands of pages of files released about this stuff because you and I were told. So that's where we are in the summer, fall of '63. You got the guy in Cuba. His name was Commander Juan Almeida, the head of the Cuban Army. So you got the JFK Almeida Q plan going on. You've got the CIA still working with Traficante, Roselli, and Carlos Marcello to kill Fidel secretly without telling JFK. But here's the problem. Working on the JFK Almeida coup plan, and you and I talked to the guy, Bobby Kennedy's number 1 Cuban guy, Harry Luis Williams, yes. Exactly. And he was assigned
got to know him pretty
3 people in the CIA to work with him. One was E. Howard Hunt, the same guy Nixon had been using back in '60. Hunt's assistant, Bernard Barker. The reason the CIA assigned Barker to work with Hunt back in 1960 was Hunt had helped to overthrow governments before in Latin America, like in Guatemala in '54, but Hunt had no mafia experience. So way back in '60, the CIA said, oh, well, here's Bernard Barker. He's worked for the mafia and Traficante for more than a decade, and now he's a low-level CIA agent. Yeah, he'll become your assistant. And then also working with Harry was a guy named James McCord, who would also be one of the Watergate burglars along with Bernard Barker. Right. And so the problem, and McCord, by the way, this may be the last time we mentioned him. From all reports, he was, as Harry Williams told us and other Robert Kennedy associates told me, was an honest, decent guy. So he's not involved with any of the,
So how and where did the mafia plan to kill Kennedy? I mean, how does that come out of this?
Well, so the way it comes out of it is the Kennedys had banned the mafia from having any role in the JFK Almeida coup plan or from reopening their casinos after it succeeded. So the mafia had nothing to gain by letting this coup plan go forward or actually
overthrow Castro.
Work, right. Well, and Almeida was going to blame he wasn't going to take the credit for Castro's death. He was going to blame it, according to files and sources, on a Russian or a Russian sympathizer, and said, oh, look, the dastardly Russians killed our beloved Fidel. I need some U.S. help to keep the Russians from taking over Cuba. And no one would ever know, that Almeida had really been working, for JFK all that time. So that was looking good. But see, working on that coup plan were E. Howard Hunt and Hunt's assistant Bernard Barker. I mean, they were arranging like big payments to Commander Almeida through foreign banks, helping to get Almeida's wife and 2 of his children out of Cuba before this coup would happen. And so Barker was still working for Santo Traficante at that time, directly, as well as working on the CIA mafia plots. Hunt was working on the CIA mafia plots. But it appears from all of my research that Barker was the guy who basically told the mafia all about the JFK Almeida coup plan. So we actually have CIA files that show, the mafia learned this top secret thing that even Lyndon Johnson, the vice president, wasn't told about. The mafia knew about it. They infiltrated it, and they were able to use it in a way that would force, because if this is a year after the Cuban Missile Crisis, when we all almost got blown up, right? And so if it came out that the U.S. was trying to, working with the number 3 guy in Cuba to overthrow, that could trigger nuclear war. And the mob knew that. They had people like Bernard Barker and another CIA agent working for Marcello by the name of David Ferry. And so, they knew the government could never let this come out. So they were planning to kill JFK in a way that would implant evidence so that you couldn't expose what they did without exposing Commander Almeida. and potentially triggering World War III. And so the plan was first done because Roselli was involved. Giancana was under too much pressure, but Roselli was fine. Traficante and Marcello liked him. It was first going to be done in Chicago in early November. Then, if that didn't work, it was going to be done November the 18th in Tampa, an attempt you and I discovered for the first time.
Yep.
And the fallback for Tampa was going to be Dallas on November the 22nd.
And we'll pick up the story on the other side of this break. It's the 56th anniversary of the assassination of Jack Kennedy. We're talking to Lamar Waldron, whose most recent book is The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
The assassination of Jack Kennedy, the crimes of Richard Nixon, and now Donald Trump's involvement. We're going to circle back around to Trump in just a minute. And Bill Barr. It's the second day of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. Your opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to actually get out there, get active, do something, tag your it. Your opportunity to help build and share progressive media. Number one, tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. Talk about it in social media. Make a tag at the end of your email address that says, I watch the Thom Hartmann Program on Free Speech TV, Dish, Direct, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways. You just think about, hey, we can toss this in, we can toss this. Tell your family about it. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. Something to bring up, maybe even have it on the TV and show people. So let's spread the word. This is, right now, one of the big challenges that Free Speech TV has, of course, is raising enough money to run this network. And, 3-4 times a year, we have to come on the air for 2 or 3 weeks each time and ask for help, or give people an opportunity to help. If we had twice as many viewers, we could do it half as much, right? Because it doesn't cost Free Speech TV anymore to have twice as many viewers. They put the signal up on the satellite or they put it out on the internet, and it really doesn't matter. On the internet, it might cost a little more if there's a lot more people watching, but it's a tiny, tiny fraction of what they would make up in increased fundraising. So please spread the word, right? That's probably the most important thing you can do. But also, we've got to pay the bills. We've got another 3 months here where we've got to pay for the lights and for the electrons to go up to the satellites and right into your home and into your TV. Pay the payrolls and everything else. We need to keep this show on the air. We need to keep this network on the air. And you're the one who can make that happen with a gift right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. I believe that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I've been doing this so long, I do it from memory. But so please call now. Here are some of the premiums that Free Speech TV is offering. With a $20 gift, they've got these a bumper sticker that says, "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says, "Nobody is above the law." It's a pretty straightforward design and logo. With a $120 gift, now this, you can break this up $10 a month over 12 months. You get the Free Speech TV T-shirt, Never Again is Now. With the $250 gift, you can sign up for the online study class with Professor Thom. That's a virtual meet and greet where we just connect on a Zoom link, and you can be on camera or not. You can just listen in if you'd prefer. You'll see me on your computer, and it'll be live in real time. It's a video chat thing, and you don't have to have any technical expertise to do this. All you have to have is a computer that's connected to the internet, and the people at Free Speech TV will email you a link, and you just click that link, and everything will pop right up, and you'll be right there. So it's kind of cool. It uses it's Skype or Zoom. I'm pretty sure it's Zoom, but whatever it is, it works really well. We've done several of them now, and they're nice. That's with a $250 gift. With a $360 gift, which again could be split out $30 a month for 3 months, or for 10 months, for 12 months, excuse me, for a year, $30 a month, or $360. You get the Study Up with Professor Thom package. including my book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World. This is the book that kind of shook the world of psychology and psychiatry, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I mean, it was extremely, you know, when I first came out with this theory back in the 90s, it was extremely controversial. I did a lot of traveling all around the world, around Australia, around Europe, all across the United States talking about this. And this is the most recent, it's the first book that I wrote on it where I laid it out. We took that book and updated it, updated the science, wrote a new chapter, particularly, one of the most important chapters, I think, and something I'd never addressed before is that, I forget whether it's 63 or 67%, but people with ADHD are roughly 2/3 more likely to have sleep problems. And it probably has to do with being high-energy people. I'm one of those people. I know what I'm talking about. And I really did a deep dive into the science and literature on this, and we found that there are things that you can do. And so there's a chapter on sleep now in that book, as well as other new content. So that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for an hour here in the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street to a restaurant and have a nice lunch together. But the bottom line is, Free Speech TV needs your help right now. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make your contribution. Help keep this network going. Help keep this show going. You know, please help Free Speech TV. This is such an important television network. It's the only genuine progressive television network on the air. Been around for 17, 18 years. I've been here for more than a decade, I believe. So please help out. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Lamar Waldron is with us. The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination and Watergate, The Hidden History, his two most recent books. He and I together wrote Legacy of Secrecy, The Long Shadow of the JFK Assassination, Robert Kennedy, National Security of the Mafia, and the Assassination of Martin Luther King, and Ultimate Sacrifice. Lamar, just when we left off, we were just at the point where they were about to assassinate Kennedy. Let's just, quickly get through that so that we can get to 1968 and Nixon, and then I want to get to Trump.
Sure.
But how did the cover-ups begin as soon as Jack Kennedy was shot in Dallas, and how does the Warren Commission figure into all this?
Well, so the mob knew that the cover-ups were literally ready and had been planned by the government for more than 2 months before Dallas, because there was something called the Cuba contingency plans.
Yeah, we found that document in the Kennedy Library. Exactly
right. And actually, you found it there, and then I got more later from the National Archives. But so what they were plans. So Robert Kennedy had a special subcommittee of the National Security Council to start, and this wasn't like political hacks like Trump uses. These are like career, experienced people to start making plans for what happens if Castro finds out about the JFK Almeida coup plan and retaliates, perhaps by killing an American ambassador in Central America, for example. What would you do, because you wouldn't know, well, wait, did the ambassador get killed in a random street robbery, or was this a targeted hit by Cuban intelligence? So you'd want to, have federal and military, U.S. military control of the autopsy, all these things. And they made these plans for more than 2 months. Two of the people making those plans were Colonel Alexander Haig, a name that you'll hear later when we talk about Watergate.
I'm in charge here. And the assistant for the Secretary of the Army, a guy by the name of Joseph Califano, who you'll also hear his name, because at the time of Watergate, he was the attorney for the Washington Post and for the Democratic National Committee at the Watergate. So anyway, those plans were in place through Bernard Barker. The mafia knew all about that. So literally they were able to kill JFK in a way. And the mob used, and I should say Marcello, Trafficante, Roselli, all made
credible confessions later in life to trusted associates, and part of the way they kept their operation so secret, more secret than the JFK Almeida coup plan, the mobsters use trusted members of their extensive drug network, since Trafficante's father had invented the French Connection heroin network. So people like Jack Ruby were part of that network, a guy that you helped to track down, Michael Victor Mertz, a French assassin who had protection from French intelligence. So they were using their most trusted, ruthless people because the dollars there. So bottom line is, Kennedy's killed. Robert Kennedy is crushed because and the mob even killed JFK in a way that Almeida had kind of been planning to kill Fidel Castro. So Bobby doesn't know, did the plan leak? Is this, Cuba? Is it whatever? And then LBJ.
So Bobby thinks that his plan to kill Castro got turned around against his own brother, and he essentially paid for the assassination of his own brother. That's his initial thought on this.
That's part of it, a big part of it, and he just didn't know, because remember, he doesn't know the CIA mafia plots with the very godfathers he's targeting have continued, and the CIA director doesn't know about those plots either. So
right, these plots that Nixon started in order to win the election in 1960.
Exactly, right. and then Lyndon Johnson, who now becomes president, he wasn't even told about the JFK Almeida coup plan. He's just finding out this for the first time. And as he told Harry Williams through Joseph Califano later, he didn't want another Bay of Pigs in his first weeks, months of his administration. Plus, he didn't want World War III, and that's what we were all thought. That's what these officials thought we could be facing if this comes out, that we were getting ready to help get rid of Castro.
So they had to cover it up so that the American people didn't find out that Castro did it, and didn't demand that we invade Cuba, which would provoke a war with Russia, because they didn't realize that was the cover-up. So we get to the Warren Commission.
And that's exactly why the Warren Commission was created, not to really get to the bottom of the assassination, but it had two reasons for existence. One reason the Warren Commission existed was to prevent World War III, and LBJ had to twist literally, not physically but mentally, twist the arm of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to get him to serve on it and to chair that commission, which was crazy because Jack Ruby, who killed the Patsy Oswald, his case could have wound up at the Supreme Court. But anyway, Warren didn't want to. LBJ said, "Look, if you don't do this, we're talking millions of lives," and so he did it. The other thing was, LBJ wanted, because JFK had died in Texas and the general public had no idea about the Chicago and Tampa attempts, he also wanted that report out so he would be, kind of cleared of involvement before the 64 election. So people like Gerald Ford, a conservative congressman from Michigan, was appointed. They had a chief counsel by the name of David Bellin. It was Gerald Ford who helped to create the phony magic bullet theory that persists to this day, that says the bullet coming down at the steep angle, hits JFK in the upper back and somehow emerges from his, just below his Adam's apple, which is higher, and then dives down. Just ridiculous stuff through Gerald Ford and this David Bellin guy, and you'll hear both of their names again later. So bottom line is, JFK's dead, LBJ's president, Richard Helms soon becomes the CIA director, and continues those CIA mafia plots all the way till 65, and finally pulls that plug. So then we're ready to finally jump ahead to 1968, and now Richard Nixon's running for president again.
Right.
Robert Kennedy's been shot; he's dead. Martin Luther King is dead. And I have to say, Nixon's strategy to win in 68 was an awful lot like Trump's strategy that led him steal the election this last time.
Which is what? Treason and bribes?
Exactly, treason, bribery, and help from foreign dictators. Those were the things. Nixon got.
You think Roger Stone was behind all this on both?
Roger Stone was like a young punk. I'm sure he knows a lot of this stuff. Well, I know he's read at least one of our books.
Yeah.
And so treason, bribes, and help from foreign dictators. Nixon's the guy that interfered with the the peace settlement that was supposed to hit right before the election, and continued the Vietnam War at the cost of thousands of Americans and tens of thousands of Southeast Asian lives. Bribes from foreign dictators, bribes from the mafia and super rich guys like Howard Hughes. So basically, Trump to win. To steal his last election just basically did in different ways what Nixon did in '68. And so Nixon basically stole that election, and was riding pretty high. Middle America, 1969, 1970, they even into 71, they were Middle America, the silent majority. They were still supporting Richard Nixon.
And then Nixon forms the Plumbers, and my recollection of 71, I had two friends who died from heroin overdoses that year in East Lansing. It was everywhere.
It was everywhere. And so there's two different things here. There's the Plumbers. Let's hit the Plumbers first. So the Plumbers were formed not in response to the Pentagon Papers, which is what you will find in 99% of the history books in America. But that didn't start, going down as far as Nixon finding out and it being a public thing in the New York Times and the newspapers and stuff like that. That didn't happen until late spring, early summer. The Plumbers were being formed in early April, late March, before the whole Pentagon Papers thing exploded. The reason the Plumbers were formed was that Johnny Roselli he'd threatened to leak the CIA mafia plots back in '67 to America's top journalist Jack Anderson, and everybody had backed off, and the mainstream media just pretended like they didn't know what that was, and so people had kind of forgotten about that. Now Roselli was facing prison and possible deportation, so he threatened in January of '71 to out the CIA mafia plots. He kind of leaked a little information, but not tying them to Nixon. And so word was that Nixon's Attorney General, John Mitchell, a tough guy who had been JFK's commander back in the PT 109 days in World War II. John Mitchell was one of the toughest, roughest guys in Washington. Reportedly, John Mitchell was in tears when Nixon told him what was about to happen, that it was going to come out, because John Mitchell, the Attorney General, kind of like today, with Barr, was also trying to manage Nixon's reelection campaign, right. and so this was horrible. So basically, a deal was cut with Johnny Roselli. Nixon turned back to E. Howard Hunt, the same guy he'd used in '60 and back in '54, and then Hunt to prevent any more leaks. Because what happens if Roselli leaked again in prison, or somebody else tried to leak this information? And they were really worried because a guy named Daniel Ellsberg had been good friends with one of the high CIA officials who had worked for Helms on the CIA mafia plots. So basically, but even before Ellsberg's name came into it, they just wanted to be ready to plug any of these leaks about the plots in general. So E. Howard Hunt recruited his old buddies like Bernard Barker, still working for Sandro Trafficante, and Frank Sturgis, also working for Sandro Trafficante. Then Pentagon Papers come out. They're worried, not so because Pentagon Papers were all about stuff before Nixon got elected. They were no threat to Nixon at all. But the CIA said, look, this Ellsberg guy, he knew the daughter of Helms' number 2 guy on the CIA mafia plots. And if she told this to Ellsberg, we see what Ellsberg's done with, that could be the end. So then so Nixon orders the Plumbers to plug that leak, and they break into Ellsberg's psychiatrist office to see if he might have, because they figured, that's the kind of thing you might have told your psychiatrist, but didn't find anything. But that went off without a hitch. That wasn't traced back to the White House at all. So they're just getting away with murder, literally, and then we come back to the heroin. So there was a huge heroin crisis, not just with the returning vets from Vietnam who were buying and getting hooked on heroin in the service clubs in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and in Thailand. In other words, when you would get a few days or a week off, you'd go to these service clubs where Trafficante had cut a deal to sell all these guys heroin. And as we will learn shortly, as Alexander Haig will learn shortly, Richard Nixon was getting a cut of those heroin sales every month taken to the White House. Now, that won't come out for a while, but that's what's literally going on.
Wow.
And so that's why Nixon starts his own White House drug unit. And who does he put on that unit but E. Howard Hunt and Traficante's men, Bernard Barker and Frank Sturgis.
To look into the heroin problem.
Right.
Amazing. We're talking to Lamar Waldron, his most recent book, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination and Watergate, The Hidden History. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We're gonna bring this back around to Donald Trump too in just a minute. It's 46 minutes past the hour. So, Lamar, how did the Democrats finally get Nixon to resign?
Well,
or do you want to finish the previous story?
Well, let's let Watergate happen first.
Okay.
Because what happened was, so Nixon was just riding high in late '71. So he goes to he orders Richard Helms to have one of E. Howard Hunt's friends arrange to assassinate Fidel Castro down in Chile, where the socialist Salvador Allende has been elected. So Nixon and all of Nixon's business supporters, they all hate Allende, right? And so this is kind of like a twofer. You can assassinate Castro and do it in Chile, so it'll embarrass Allende and hurt his standing in the socialist world. But Hunt's friend is not able to get the Cuban exiles, and these were people that knew Bernard Barker and people like that too, to pull that off. Castro finds out about this hit, though, that he was almost killed there, and he's royally pissed off. So Castro compiles a dossier of all the U.S. attempts. I shouldn't say all. I should say a lot of the U.S. attempts to kill him going back to when Nixon was vice president. And Castro gives that dossier of CIA assassination attempts to the Chilean ambassador in Washington, D.C. So the CIA, because they had infiltrated that embassy, of course, because that's what our CIA does, they find out that there's this huge 100-plus page dossier with pictures and dates and places, and it lists all the assassination attempts against Fidel that started under Vice President Nixon. And so Nixon's riding high, but he knows it wasn't just assassinating Castro. The $1 million bribe was part of that deal, too. And guess what? In 1972, there's a new $1 million bribe, again, to get Hoffa out of prison this time, but with special conditions, so the mafia didn't have to keep dealing with him as the head of the Teamsters. So there's a new $1 million bribe on top of the old $1 million bribe. Nixon's worried if this comes out, if the Chilean embassy gives that to the DNC, he's toast. He's not getting reelected, even if he's running against George McGovern, who I'm proud I voted for. But so first he has the plumbers burglarize the Chilean embassy, which he talks about on a tape that wasn't released until 1999, and which you won't find, I don't think, in maybe one other Watergate book besides mine. And and he had the boys burglarize it. He knows all about that. And then they only find part of the dossier there, but it's enough to scare them. Because they can say, oh, my God, this is a few pages out of a 100-plus page document. And so that's the reason they start trying to burglarize the DNC. There are 4 attempts, 2 successful. They're caught on the last one. They weren't there just for bugging. They had enough film to take thousands of pictures because they were going to photograph everything. Almost every one of the Watergate burglars had worked on some aspect of the CIA mafia plots, so they would recognize what they found. That all happened, but all that's happening, Watergate happens in June of 1972. Nixon's overwhelmingly reelected that fall in November, and he's riding super high. Finally, it's James McCord, who is the honest guy in this whole plumbers group. He has a conscience, and so he starts spilling stuff to the Judge Sirica. With the televised hearings, it turns out they're tapes. And then everything drags out, and then we come to early August of 1974 when Nixon finally resigns. But it's a myth that Goldwater and some Republican senators got him to resign. And when we come back, I'll explode that myth, and then we'll get into Donald Trump.
Cool. Well, Lamar Waldron is with us. We'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Welcome back. We're talking to Lamar Waldron. Lamar and I wrote 2 books about the Kennedy assassination, Legacy of Secrecy, and Ultimate Sacrifice. And since then, Lamar has written Watergate, The Hidden History, and The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. And so, Lamar, we were, refresh my memory as to where we were. I think we were right up to Watergate.
We were just about getting Nixon to resign. So there's a big myth that after the Supreme Court ordered finally, more than 2 years after the Watergate break-in, the Supreme Court finally orders the release of the most important of the Nixon tapes. And there's this myth that Goldwater and a couple of other senators went and talked Nixon into resigning. But, if you read the Arizona papers, who knew Goldwater well and interviewed him frequently and they talked to him at the time, that's like a total myth. They just went to say, look, you're going to get impeached in the House because the Democrats controlled both houses of Congress, and you don't have very much support in the Senate. So they weren't trying to talk him into resigning at all. And Goldwater, the rest of his life, resented people, repeating that
really?
Lie, basically. Yeah. So why did Nixon resign? So Nixon was telling people he was going to fight it because national security was on his side. He was going to raise national security of this, national security of that, and he was going to get off. Now, what did he mean by national security? And by the way, the Senate Watergate Committee had started interviewing Johnny Roselli back in February of '74, but that whole investigation suddenly got shut down by Sam Ervin, the head of the Senate Watergate Committee. In other words, so they never really found out Nixon's role in the same.
And then Roselli ended up chopped up into pieces in a drum off the coast of Florida.
That will soon happen. But the reason that investigation got shut down, the reason Nixon thought he could fight impeachment and win it, was Commander Almeida was still in place and still number 3 in Cuba.
So Nixon was still going to have his October surprise.
Well, no, what he was going to have was he was going to threaten, I think, to out the number 3 guy in Cuba. In other words, the number 3 guy in Cuba being unexposed and potentially of use again, in other words, Nixon was willing to throw Almeida and his family under the bus if that's what it took. I think that's how somebody went to Sam Ervin and got him to stop the Roselli side of the investigation after they'd interviewed Roselli once.
Amazing.
And so he was ready to do that again. So how did Nixon get forced to resign? Alexander Haig had finally who is now Nixon's chief of staff, is Mick Mulvaney. General Haig had one of his men from the Army Investigative Service, I think it's called the CIC or something like that, actually track one of Nixon's couriers who brought the money, and sometimes it was gold, back from Southeast Asia, and Haig had put 2 and 2 together and realized Nixon was getting this drug payoff money from Traficante's drug operations. And so now that was not known to the Senate Watergate Committee, that was not known to the House Impeachment Committee, that was not known to anybody. That would not come out for another, I think, more than 2 years.
We have 1 minute, Lamar.
So it appears that Haig got Nixon to resign by cutting the deal with Ford. Okay, so that's what got them to resign. But all this still didn't come out because there was a commission to investigate ties between Watergate and the JFK assassination called the Rockefeller Commission, but Ford appointed it. People like Ronald Reagan were on it. David Bellin, his old counsel, ran it. They didn't turn up all the stuff. Then you had people like George Bush Sr. and William Barr in the CIA withholding files, not just from the Rockefeller Commission, but from the Senate Church Committee. So all this stuff
so Bill Barr played a role in all this, too.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Bill Barr played a role in all this, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was a counsel for the CIA when they were withholding all the important stuff about Barker, Hunt, Roselli, the CIA mafia plots. They were withholding all that stuff from these congressional committees.
We are just plain old flat out of time. Lamar,
and that brings us to today. But for the rest of it, you can just look in the headlines of the newspapers, and it's going to play out. I think a lot like it did, which means it's going to take a heck of a long time to get rid of Trump.
That's very
That's
interesting.
my prediction.
Okay, thank you. Lamar Waldron, Watergate, The Hidden History of the JFK assassination, and the books that Lamar and I wrote together, Legacy of Secrecy and Ultimate Sacrifice. And
thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Lamar. Great talking with you. And we'll see you on Monday. So have a great weekend. Tag, you're it.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
We say fight back!
You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave,